I believe Judge Fields is with us perhaps as well. We'll get to him in just a minute. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilwoman Del Chapo.
Here.
Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory. Okay. Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seeking.
Here.
Councilmember Shade.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Appel.
Here.
Councilwoman Jackson. Here. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. So
I'll go back and ask Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Waring.
Here.
Okay, so Councilmember Mitchell is the only one who's
okay.
not on right now.
I'm sure he'll be with us in a minute.
Yes. Yes.
So you may see over my right-hand shoulder the American flag. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God,
Under God, indivisible,
liberty,
liberty, and justice for all.
I must admit there's something you miss in a Zoom meeting about being able to recite things together. But thank you all for that. Could I call on Councilmember Brady to lead us in an invocation if y'all would like to join us? Councilmember Brady?
I'd be glad to. If you'd bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, for blessing us and bringing us together so that we can make decisions that impact the lives of our fellow citizens. We pray that even though we may disagree, you will bring us together in your name to be your faithful servants and to serve our citizens diligently. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you kindly. So our first order of business is a presentation, a resolution dedicating one of our municipal courtrooms in honor of Judge Richard E. Fields, who is with us this evening. Can I entertain a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any discussion? We'll have some more discussion in a minute. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And for those who haven't had the opportunity to read the resolution, I would like to share it with everyone for the record. If you're not speaking, if you would kindly put your device on mute, that would be greatly appreciated because we get some feedback. So whereas Judge Richard E. Fields was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina, he graduated high school from the Avery Institute and attended West Virginia State College, now West Virginia University. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration. He then entered Howard University School of Law, graduating with a degree of Bachelor of Laws in 1947. Passed the bar, was admitted to practice law in the District of Columbia and the state of South Carolina. Whereas after working as a waiter in Washington, D.C. during and after graduation from Howard, Judge Field began his practice of law in Charleston. In April of 1949, he was the first African-American to open a law office in Charleston since the early 1900s at that time, and was one of only 2 persons of color practicing law in the state of South Carolina at that time. Whereas Judge Field married the late Myrtle T. Evans, a Charleston County public school teacher in 1951. They have 2 children, a daughter, Mary Diane Fields Reed, married Michael Reed, and a graduate of Fisk University and the University of South Carolina Law School, and a son, Richard E. Fields Jr., a graduate of Howard University. Whereas Judge Fields' life has been devoted to many remarkable religious, civic, and political pursuits. Among many religious activities when he returned to Charleston, Judge Fields resumed his membership in the historic Centenary Methodist Church, with after a church merger became a United Methodist Church. He served as treasurer of the church for more than 50 years. Whereas in 1952, Judge Fields was elected to the Board of Trustees of Claflin College, now Claflin University. He represented the university as its attorney and served on many of its committees during his first 50 years on the board. He also, I may interject, asked my dad to serve on that board with him back in the 1960s. Whereas in 1969, Judge Fields was elected municipal judge for the city of Charleston and served in that position till 1975. When nominated to the position, the city council minutes reflect that there was, quote, no attorney who fights his cases more diligently, deserves the job more highly, or would add more to the present city administration than Judge Fields. At this time, at the time of his election, Judge Fields was believed to have been the first African-American elected judicial official in the entire Southeast. He was thereafter elected judge of family court and held that position in 1980 and was elected a judge of circuit court, South Carolina, where he served until his retirement in 1992. While serving as municipal judge for the city of Charleston, Judge Fields handled many diverse and challenging cases. Among those were the hospital strike cases. For several months, Judge Fields heard cases in municipal courtroom at night, adjudicating cases involving the protesters. The defendants were mostly students and a few members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, including Reverend Ralph Abernathy. And whereas while sitting on municipal court bench, Judge Fields handled the hospital strike cases and every other case that came before him with patience, open-mindedness, courtesy, compassion, and common sense. He was willing to do what the law required him to do, though the course he followed was not always a popular one. In issuing rulings, Judge Fields was not influenced by the identity, race, gender, political status, wealth, or relationship of the party or lawyer before him. Whereas City Council has determined that it is fitting to honor Judge Fields for his lifetime of personal, professional, and civic commitment to the city of Charleston, and in particular to his service as a municipal judge by dedicating a courtroom at the municipal court complex in his honor. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of Charleston and City Council assembled that Judge Fields shall be recognized for his many outstanding contributions to the city of Charleston, including his service as municipal judge, and we dedicate a courtroom in the municipal court complex in his honor to be known as the Honorable Richard E. Fields Courtroom. Congratulations, Judge Fields. So, Councilmember Shade, if you would like to make a couple of remarks, and then I'd like to ask Judge Fields if he can make remarks to us as well.
Thank you, Mayor Tecklenburg, members of council, Madam Clerk, the Honorable Judge Richard Fields. I think you were in the chambers with Judge Jefferson, I believe. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Charles Carish, who brought all this to our attention. We were intending to celebrate what we thought was Judge Fields' 100th birthday on October the 1st, and I think actually is his 101st birthday on October the 1st, 2020. But I would just want to publicly state to the community what a treasure Judge Fields has meant to the city of Charleston, to the state of South Carolina. As a young lawyer, I sort of cut my teeth in appearing in front of Judge Fields when I was on the member of the Charleston County Public Defender's Office. And I observed Judge Fields during that time and in later life as always, who conducted himself as a first-class gentleman and as a first-class scholar, as a first-class judge. He set the standard for judicial temperament, judicial wisdom, judicial decisions. And I'm looking at Lenny Krawcheck over, and he's nodding his head with me as I'm mentioning these accolades of Judge Fields. And this is not an overstatement as to the value that Judge Fields has brought to our community. He was a trendsetter for our community. And as you mentioned, Mayor, in your proclamation, he treated everybody equally and fairly before the law. And that is not an understatement as well, or an overstatement. We are blessed, and I put a capital B on that. We are blessed that Judge Fields was our son of the city of Charleston. God bless him. I think that we all would look to him for guidance and wisdom in our early years as lawyers and as other judges. Congratulations, Judge Fields. God bless you. We wish you another 100 years of lifelong community to our city. And this is just a fitting tribute to you and to our city. Thank you for the opportunity to honor you in this way.
Thank you, Councilmember Shade. Judge Fields.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
God bless you. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
The floor is open if you would like to make any remarks.
I'm overwhelmed by this event honoring me in this manner. I'm particularly overwhelmed by the fact that I've received this honor from a young man who's now our mayor and whose father was one of my very, very best friends.
God bless you.
My earliest days as an attorney. I don't want to seem glib, but as I hear these remarks, I'm reminded of a bereaving widow who sat on the first pew of a ceremony honoring her husband who was in a casket. And after she heard all of those beautiful words about him, she turned to her son, who was about 6 years old, and says, "Boy, look in that casket and see if that's your son." I don't know if I'm deserving of all of this honor. I've enjoyed it so much. I've had such a good time, and I've made such great friends. It's been my honor to serve the city of Charleston. I love Charleston. I remember so well in 1947 when I was about to graduate from the law school. Friends of mine wanted to take me along with them to New York, to Illinois, Chicago, to Detroit, and various other places. I said, no, I'm going home. They said, they're not going to let you practice law in South Carolina. I said, oh yeah, they will. I've always loved South Carolina. It's my home. It's my place where my mother and father were. And I've had such a great life here and made such great friends. I don't know whether I deserve this honor or not, but I'll be delighted to accept it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the great work that you're doing for the city of Charleston. And thank you for the many friends which I've made as an officer, judicial officer in the state of South Carolina, not only in the city of Charleston, but across this entire state, everywhere I've been. In those days, I was received with such grace and with such honor. I'll never forget it. I don't know why I'm blessed to live to be 100 or 101, whatever. My birth certificate says I'm 100. My father said I would be 101. I'll accept either one. It's been such a great honor to serve the people of the city of Charleston, and a great honor to live in the Charleston and to consider myself a South Carolinian. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and
Yes,
the members of the city of Charleston, county of Charleston. Thank you very much.
God bless you. You're an amazing, amazing gentleman. Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would be remiss. Judge Fielding, your classmate, one of them that's still alive, and that's Mrs. Margaret Dudley Gregory. I think you knew her as Dudley.
Yes.
She told me to tell you she's right behind you. She's 99, and the 99 and a half won't do for her. She's going to try to reach her 100. So she told me to send her regards and happy birthday.
You. Ladies, you look great. You look great.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, it's just such an honor to even see Judge Field on this Zoom meeting. Judge Field has been a legend in our community, the first African-American lawyer. I will be 65 later, a few weeks from now. The first African-American lawyer that I ever met in my life was Judge Fields. My sister, he hired her as a little student out of high school to work during the summertime. Judge Fields he's a man of first in this town. The first scholarship that was endowed at the College of Charleston is in the name of Judge Fields. Myself and you may remember Tom Waring chaired that process to endow that scholarship. And when this first student
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yes, sir. It's offered through the AV Research Center at the College of Charleston. And at the first student to receive that award, when the student came up, Judge Fields asked him a couple of questions. Unbeknownst to the young man was a relative of Judge Fields, I think out of Sumter, South Carolina. So it's hard to go in this country without finding somebody who knows Judge Fields. And I'm looking at this Zoom meeting, and I'm looking at the talent on this particular meeting, yourself and certainly Mr. Lenny Krawcheck, two wonderful gentlemen. When you look at wanting to be, how do you act as a citizen in any city? These two men are prime examples for a nation. You know, I've never heard this term American exceptionalism until President Obama was in the presidency. But when you speak in terms of American exceptionalism, it's right here in your own community. It's right here in the example of Judge Fields. It's right here in the example of Mr. Krawcheck. We're so blessed to have you in our community. And you got to tell us, Judge Fields, just how do you do it? How do you make it to 100? How do you make it to 101 and have the sense of humor that you have today? Thank you so much for God bringing you this way, Judge Fields.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Shade.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make a comment. I think that there are several members of Judge Fields' family and who are present on the Zoom call. If we were in council chambers, we would see them all. Maybe they could just announce themselves. And I know that there's several members of the County Bar Association who also joined in as well to take part in this too. But Judge Fields, if there's some family members that you want to recognize, please, I would like to give them the opportunity to do that.
Well, the member of my family really is my sister-in-law, Miss Ann Fields, who's from Germany, and who was married my brother many years ago and tried to re-raise him, and she's pretty successful, and we still love her here. And here's my surrogate daughter, Judge Jefferson, who was my law clerk, and it's my surrogate daughter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she is my daughter. I accept her all as my daughter. She's been a delight, and she's never left my side, even though her tenure as a clerk. She's one of my first clerks.
No, she was your last.
Alicia was the last clerk. I was next.
Yeah.
And Diane and Ricky on
Diane. There's Elizabeth Austin, who's my surrogate daughter, and her husband is one of my surrogate sons, and she's here with me. And
there's Diane.
Diane.
She's right there.
Yeah, there's
screen.
Diane. Diane's on the Zoom. Yes, my daughter.
Hey, Diane.
And your son-in-law.
Hey, Diane, it's been a long time.
Hey, Dudley. Oh, excuse me. Councilman Gregory. How are you?
Incredible.
Thank you all for being
I
with
think
us.
Ricky is on
Ricky's
too.
on.
Ricky is on too.
Yes.
Ricky's on.
Where's Ricky?
Where's Ricky?
seen Ricky in a long time.
Rick,
He's on.
he's on.
You must
I
be-
don't know. He must have
Hey.
walked away. No, that's not Rick.
might be-
Well, thank you all for being with us, and thank you for sharing your father, your surrogate father, a real blessing to our community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Father.
I just want to say, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say that Judge,
Yeah.
Mayor, I want to say, Judge, God bless you. I remember from Bogart Street, and I remember Diane when she was younger from Bogart Street, and the Ricky, all from Bogart Street near
Oh,
Purple
that's right.
Street. That was way back then in
Yeah.
the 50s. And I know Judge Fields took a cousin of mine, Jamal Manigo, and was working with him for years and years and years until Jamal Manigo got lost. But now we found him. He's back here on Guatemala Island now, living in Guatemala. So he is back here in the number 2. So I would say God bless you and keep on.
Thank you.
All right, so if I may move on to our next item on the agenda, and Judge Fielding, you've set the stage because we're honoring yet another true and fine Charlestonian gentleman in Lenny Krawcheck, who has served our city so well for over 41 years as chairman of our Board of Zoning and Appeals. And so Lenny, in your honor, I have a proclamation to read as well, and then I'll call on Councilmember Appel, who requested this, and then ask for your remarks as well. So the city of Charleston wishes to recognize the years of service and dedication of one of its most committed citizens, native Charlestonian Lenny Krawcheck. He earned a bachelor's degree following attendance at Duke University and the College of Charleston, and received his degree in law from Tulane University. He's been licensed as a land use and zoning and real estate attorney for 55 years. Lenny served as a member, I bet some of y'all don't remember this or know it. He served as a member of the South Carolina House of Representatives from 67 to 70, and as a member of the South Carolina Tricentennial Commission from 68 to 70. Lenny was appointed by Mayor Palmer Gilliard to the City Board of Adjustment, the precursor of the Board of Zoning Appeals, in April 1971, and served just for 1 year. Charleston City Council later appointed Lenny to the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals in December 1979, where he served diligently and conscientiously for 41 years from the time of his appointment until August 18th, 2020. During that time, Lenny presided over at least 900 Board of Zoning Appeals meetings, whereas Lenny Krawcheck is the current member of the South Carolina Bar, American Bar Association chairman of the Charleston County Bar Real Estate Section, and whereas Lenny has led a truly remarkable life of public service and has rightfully earned the respect of his peers, fellow board members, and the city of Charleston. And I may say, he mostly earned the respect of every single individual who came before that board. I witnessed him many times. They never left, even though they might not have gotten the ruling they agreed. They were heard. They understood the proceedings. Lenny, you always provided that transparency and explanation to all of our citizens and made them feel at home in your presence. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, in recognition of your service, do hereby proclaim today, Tuesday, September 8th, as Lenny Krawcheck Day in the City of Charleston. Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and what an honor it is today to be able to honor a nothing short of a Charleston legend. Lenny Krawcheck is just words can't describe how great of a guy he is and what he's meant to the city of Charleston for all these years. You know, I had the pleasure of being a BZA member under Chairman Krawcheck starting in the fall of 2016, and you know, I'm a pretty competitive guy. When I got on the board, I figured, how long has Lenny been on the Board of Zoning Appeals? I heard 41 years. I said, I can beat that. But it turns out I fell a little bit short. But it was an honor to be a part of the BZA with Lenny. I learned how to be a better lawyer, a better board member, certainly, and a better human being, frankly. I've represented clients in front of BZAs all over the state. And there's one common thread you'll see at these BZAs. Most of them have time limits for speaking, especially for lawyers. I've had buzzers buzzed at me. I've had time shouted at me. I've had a sheriff's deputy look at me like he was gonna come grab me once. That never happened under Chairman Krawcheck's leadership. He gave everybody all the time they needed to get there, to have their day, to have their opinion and interests expressed. Sometimes we leave the chambers at about 11 o'clock at night, but that's okay, because that meant that win, lose, or draw, everybody that appeared before Lenny's board felt like they had a fair shake. And that's the right way to do it. So it is nothing short of an honor today to be able to honor Mr. Krawcheck and all of his long years of service. And I was speaking with him the other day, and he mentioned I'm paraphrasing here, that for all of his time and years he dedicated to the city of Charleston gave more to him and meant more to him. And I think that when you really reflect on what it means to be a public servant, what it means to be a citizen, it's about giving back. It's not about taking. And Lenny gave a whole lot to the city of Charleston, helping to shape its path and what we see today. And it's an honor to be able to recognize such a distinguished individual. And without further ado, let's turn it over to Mr. Krawcheck himself.
Mr. Chairman. Lenny, would you like to make a remark? Your phone is muted right now. There you go.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now I can. Thank you.
Well, I'm almost speechless. I want to first of all thank Ross Appel and you, Mayor Tecklenburg, and the members of council for appointing me, and Mayor Gilliard and Mayor Riley and their councils before you. It's an honor and a privilege to participate in public service, especially for the city of Charleston. It's no secret that I love the city of Charleston. I've lived here my entire life. I still live in the house on Colonial Street where I was born. I have practiced law now for 50 some odd years in my office in downtown Charleston on State Street. I love the Broad Street area, the downtown area, the city as a whole. It's the finest city in the country. I have no doubt about that. And to be allowed to make a contribution back to the community that's given so much to your family, and that goes back to my father, Jack Krawcheck, who was a merchant on King Street for many, many, many years, and my brother and family and my children. It's a real privilege. It's also an honor to be mentioned on the same evening as Judge Fields. Judge Fields was an older lawyer when I was a younger lawyer, and he's always had the respect of the entire bar and the entire community, and that continues to this day. As a matter of fact, Judge Fields and I had a matter. We represented clients in a almost contentious matter about 3 years ago, and he can still do his job wonderfully as a lawyer and has my unending respect. I hope we'll have something else again, quite honestly. Thank you for allowing me to serve the city of Charleston. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a special board, and as I told Ross, all you can really hope for is that when the dust settles, that the interested parties will leave, win or lose, thinking that they got a just hearing, that they were fully heard, and they could have won or they could have lost, and the board did its very best to make its decisions. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that the members of the board, I've served with many, many over the years, and they have been really no agenda, just trying to do their job, trying to apply the facts to the law that City Council has given us. And I said time and time again, I think that the losers have left feeling pretty good. Well, they could have won it. They got a fair shake. And I think that's all you can really hope for. I also want to say that Lee Batchelder, the zoning administrator, and Penny Ashby make the job of zoning in the city so much easier for the members of the board and for the community. They fairly hear everyone out, and it's just a pleasure. It's been a pleasure of mine to work with the city zoning staff over the years, and especially with Lee and Penny. They have my unending respect and admiration. Also, I would like to mention that we are all indebted to the Historic Charleston Foundation, to the Preservation Society, and to the various neighborhood associations. They try their best to do their best for the city. They don't always win, they don't always lose, but they're there every other Tuesday night with the Board of Zoning Appeals, with the Board of Architectural Review, and they're in there pitching for what they think is good for the city. And many, many more times than not, it is good for the city. I also would like to mention my wife, Townie, who's put up with me coming home late every other Tuesday night for many, many years now, and waiting for me for dinner and offering her advice and support. She's been really a good trooper, and I'm indebted to her. And Mr. Mayor, I enough said. Thank you so much for my day, but it's our day because we all get to live in the city of Charleston, and we're just privileged to be able to do that. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. God bless you. Well, we're not done with you just yet. Councilmember Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. I called Lenny this morning to chat with him for a few moments about this afternoon's proceedings, and commented to him that his fingerprints are all over the city, and those are good fingerprints for his mark, for what he led the city on these very important decisions, has made the city what it is today. And I think it's just take a moment to reflect a private citizen who has spent 41 years of his time for those regular meetings without being paid one penny for that work, is a true sign of what community service is really all about. And we can't thank you enough, Lenny, for that. And it really is an incredible mark that you have left on our community. And I hope that a lot of young people out there who are listening to this to understand that you are a true servant of the city. As I said about Judge Fields, you're one of our sons. You are the son of the city. You and your family and y'all's long mark on King Street and to our legal profession. God bless you. And so much from the deepest part of my heart. Thank you to you and to Judge Fields for setting a high bar, for being a true gentleman through the purest sense of the word. God bless you. Thank you so much for what you've done for our community.
So, Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Krawcheck and Councilman Shahid just said it. You said you're a gentleman, but you're really a gentleman's gentleman. You would think after 41 years you would kind of slow down and lose the edge toward the end, but I would point out your input on the new hotel ordinance wasn't complete until we heard from you. Believe it or not, the members of council had elephant ears wanting to know, what did Mr. Krawcheck think? You know, to be your best as you leave, as you were coming in, is just such a credit to your talent and your skills. I he's a person that when you saw him across the street, you wanted to go across the street to say hello and introduce him to your wife or your relative or your very best friend. So Godspeed go with you and your family. And I really meant that when I said the piece about American exceptionalism. We always think that you have to go hundreds of miles away or maybe even thousands of miles away to come into that level of nationwide exceptionalism. But you walk with that grace every day. So thank you for every day that you gave to this city. Thank you, sir.
Yes, so could I call, Councilmember Seekings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Lenny, thank you for being here tonight. It's no surprise that as we look across the Zoom, Lenny is in his office speaking back to us. He is clearly and truly the hardest working person I've ever met. I've known him since day one at the bar, and he has really set the standard on so many different levels. Two things in his comments that caught my ear. One is he talked about his 41 years on the board and winners and losers. There were no losers, because what Mr. Krawcheck has done for the last 41 years is shaped what he describes as the finest city in America. And he shaped it in a way that no one else could have done it. I mean, it is amazing where we are and who we are today. And by and large, there's not a square foot of this city that doesn't have the fingerprints of Lenny Krawcheck on them. And for that, we're eternally grateful. And we will remember that. The other thing is that he noted that Townie waits up for him on every other Tuesday night for dinner. We on City Council grouse a lot about getting out of our meetings late. Many of those Tuesday nights, Lenny and his team were just warming up. I promise you, a lot of those meals were served on Wednesday, not on Tuesday. And all of those hours voluntarily given back to the city where he grew up, where he lives. It is a feat that will never be repeated. And so this one small moment in history, I will say, Lenny, when I first met you and when I first got elected, it was always my understanding that your appointment to the BZA was for life. You were much like a federal judge. So we probably need to get the clerk or mayor go back and look and see. I'm not sure we could really accept this, but in the spirit of who we are in the city, this city is yours, Lenny. It's been an honor to know you, to call you a friend. And to every time I walk out of my door, know that you spent 41 years making sure that this was the best city in America. And congratulations, you achieved it. So thank you.
So Lenny, in order to continue this memory on, we decided kind of quietly that we'd do a little more than give you a day. So Councilmember Appel, can I entertain a motion from you?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, for a guy as distinguished as Mr. Krawcheck, a proclamation in a day isn't going to be sufficient. So I would like to make a motion this evening for us to rename the public meeting room at 2 George Street, where all the BZA and BAR and Planning Commission meetings are held, the Lenny Krawcheck or Leonard Krawcheck, it's up to you, whatever you want to go with, we'll take. To dedicate this room forever in his honor, because I want everybody who ever walks in and out of that room to know about the best that ever did it. So that's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. It's unanimous acclamation, Lenny. God bless you. Thank you for your service.
Mayor, thank you.
We're giving a virtual standing ovation here.
That's right. You can go to your little reactions button and do a little thing like that.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. All right. Thank you, Judge Fields. Thank you, Chairman Krawcheck. So next, and then I'm going to ask council if they'd be willing to make a little adjustment to the agenda. But first, we have a recognition of Charleston Trident Association of Realtors. Josh Dix is with us. They've awarded us a $3,000 grant, a rebuilding grant, and it's perfect timing. Josh, we formed the Central Business District Improvement Commission, which has been meeting the last few weeks. And one need was to repair our sidewalks and get pressure washing going on Upper King Street. help rebuild our businesses up there on Upper King Street. And that's what we're dedicating these funds to. So we wanted to thank you and give you and the Realtor organization an opportunity to be acknowledged. Josh Dix.
Mr. Mayor, I want to say thank you for allowing us to be a part of this process and attain the grant for you through NAR. What a night to be recognized with 2 Lions of Charleston that just came before us, but truly thankful for your opportunity, and we're happy to do it and hope to do it again. So thank you.
God bless you. Thank you, Josh. We look forward to continuing our partnership together. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
So speaking of legends, got one more legend for you, and we're going to reserve comments on this until our next meeting. And I sent an email to council earlier today, but just to let you know that after 20 years of serving as our clerk of council and well over 30 years serving the city of Charleston, that Vanessa Turner Maybank, our dear and devoted clerk of council, has announced that she wishes to retire. Vanessa, we're going to miss you, but we wish you so well in your future endeavors, and we know they'll be long and many. And so I wanted to also just briefly recognize Vanessa tonight, but we'll allow more comments and involvement if you don't mind next meeting, because we're running behind schedule. Vanessa, though, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you so much, Mayor. This is a surprise that you did this today, but thank you so much. And I just want everybody to know how much I have really enjoyed working for the city. It's been a wonderful opportunity, and I thank all of you who've been involved to make that happen.
God bless. We'll have more comments and some kind of virtual party for you at our next meeting. So council members, if I may indulge you to take one item out of order on our agenda, out of due respect to President Hsu, President of the College of Charleston. I had told him to be on board about 6 o'clock, and it's already 6:43, and we still have some hearings and some public participation. So if it's okay with y'all, I'd like to move item I2, our update on the city's response to COVID-19, and we can even make our city response comments later if there's no objection. I'd like to ask President Hsu of the College of Charleston to address us about their terrific plans for the reopening of the College of Charleston, working with the city of Charleston to make it a safe reopening for all of our community. President Hsu.
Well, thank you, Mayor Tecklenburg. It's my great honor and to be with all of you here. I would be remiss not to congratulate the 2 College of Charleston sons on their wonderful honors today. Mr. Lenny Krawcheck, who is a College of Charleston class of 1962 graduate, and Judge Field, I will call him Dr. Field because he received an honorary doctoral degree from the college in 2016. So you both do the college proud, and we're honored to be associated with you both. So Mr. Mayor and members of this City Council, thanks again for inviting me here. First, let me begin by sharing our sincere gratitude with you from all of us at the College of Charleston. I know how difficult these past several months have been to serve as an elected official and as a public servant. As a newcomer to Charleston, I sincerely appreciate all of your hard work and the many difficult decisions you have made to keep this community safe. Whether it is the face covering ordinance or the limitations on gathering sizes, Your actions have made a difference here in Charleston. As the president of the College of Charleston, I want to thank the City Council, the Mayor's Office, the Charleston City Police, and many other municipal offices for being such great leaders of the community and great partners for the college. The College of Charleston is able to be the great institution that it is because of our incredible collaboration with you all. So on behalf of the College of Charleston community, thank you. As you may know, the College of Charleston began its fall semester online 2 weeks ago on August 25th, and we intend to return to campus and begin our in-person hybrid classes on Monday, September 14th, which is the coming Monday. Our faculty and staff worked very hard throughout the summer to prepare for this, and I'm confident that we are now ready. As we approach our return date, I want to reassure you that our COVID-19 response team is monitoring closely not only the news and numbers from around the state and around the country, but also, more importantly, among our campus community. And we are ready to make any adjustment needed as dictated by data and science. And as you might expect, there are many lessons to be learned from our sister institutions around the country. So what are some of those lessons? Well, the numbers are certainly daunting. More than 51,000 cases and counting have been reported on US college campuses. In many states, the flagship universities like the University of South Carolina or the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill are taking the brunt of the virus spread, which makes sense since most of those universities are quite large. They are more like miniature cities crammed into a very small geography. A challenge for many of the flagships in their concentrated Greek villages where large unsanctioned gatherings have been taking place. Fortunately, our setup at the college as it relates to these social organizations is not like the large schools. Our smaller size in that respect may be a big advantage right now. Despite the news stories that you see daily and talk about the failures of universities to curb the spread of the virus, there are universities around the country, large and small, which are able to keep the positive cases among their campus communities to a manageable level. Large campuses such as the University of Georgia and Georgia Tech and campuses closer to our size like Coastal Carolina, which returned to in-person instruction yesterday but moved in 2 weeks ago, have not recorded excessively large numbers. For example, Coastal Carolina only has 54 positive cases out of a student body of 9,000. And smaller schools such as Winthrop and Francis and Marion University, which also moved their students into their residence halls about 2 weeks ago, have far fewer positive cases. Interestingly, most universities are finding that on-campus behavior is fairly good, but off-campus and weekend gatherings are a problem and much harder to control. The statement seems pretty self-evident. However, peer monitoring seems to be having a positive effect, but that is only part of the solution. To that end, we updated our student code of conduct to reflect the work of our student-written Kruger pledge and put into place a process for interim suspensions of violations. We're taking the Cougar Pledge very seriously with our students. Our hope is that our many protocols and practices together, as outlined in our Back on the Bricks Return to Campus plan, will allow us to open up safely for both the students and our local communities. I imagine many community members are nervous about our students starting back next Monday. There may be a perception that 10,000 students are suddenly about to descend on the city. Well, in reality, that number of newcomers this week or next week is much smaller. For this fall semester, we have worked hard to de-densify our residence halls. So only about 2,000 students will be moving into our campus housing this weekend. The majority of our students are either already been living here for some time now, most likely since July or early August, or are staying home, taking their courses online from Greenville, South Carolina, or New Jersey. As I have stated repeatedly, the college will pivot as necessary as science and data dictate. Our hope is that our many health and safety protocols, along with guidance from our public health or officials and partner agencies, will help us navigate any uptick of positive cases among our campus community. At this time, our main message to students and our greater campus community is about adhering to prevention efforts and complying with campus regulations and city ordinances. That means wearing a face covering, practice social distancing, wash your hands frequently, and try to limit the number of people with whom you come into direct contact. This is strange and challenging time for the College of Charleston, and in fact for everyone in higher education around the country. However, I'm confident that our plans are well thought out, that they are flexible enough to accommodate what is a very fluid situation. Of course, that is what you would expect from a liberal arts university, a place that teaches you to be adaptable and creative in your problem solving. As is shown around the country, the partnership between cities and universities is a very important factor for the success of universities in this pandemic. And so is the partnership between the College of Charleston and the City of Charleston. I understand that the city's legal team will be giving an overview of the different ordinances later in today's meeting. My hope is that these ordinances will help us to curb potentially dangerous behaviors in this pandemic. Our Executive Vice President of Student Affairs, Alicia Caudell, who is actually online and participating in this discussion, and her team will be working closely with Mr. Dan Riccio of livability to link violations in the community to our student code of conduct. These various measures and partnerships will certainly help reduce any large parties or gatherings, and therefore limit the chances of a super spreader event occurring in our city. Since moving to Charleston, I've learned a key phrase that most locals know all too well. You probably all knew this before, but this is, I guess, something I learned only recently. And that is the term, the cone of uncertainty. I know we seem to be living in that cone of uncertainty 24/7 right now, but the storm that is this moment will eventually pass, and we will continue to adjust to the storm and weather it together. Again, thank you, Mayor Tecklenburg, City Council members, and city staff members for all of your hard work to help Charleston respond to this crisis. I hope to see you in person soon, whether on campus or around the city, even if it is only your eyes above your face coverings. Thank you.
Well, thank you, President Hsu. I can't tell you how much we value our partnership with you. And as I've stated before, the origins of the college are together with the city. And I feel like our paths are still together and interwoven. To let council know, staff and council members have been working with the College of Charleston, not just in the last week, but over these last few months to prepare for their reopening. We have our Town and Gown Committee that's led by Councilmember Seekings, who has continued to work with neighborhoods and staff. In addition, our kind of special team of folks that have been focused on COVID-19 ever since the beginning of this pandemic, including Tracy McKee and Jan Parks and Mark Wilbert and others, have been meeting regularly, not just with the college, but with the Citadel and other local institutions. But recently, with their opening coming up, there's been a increased focus. And I must say, when I met recently with President Hsu and we talked about what was going on in Columbia and other colleges around the country, we do not want to see Charleston and the College of Charleston, repeat those mistakes. And it's clear, as the president said, that the number one culprit is when students get together in large numbers in enclosed spaces, particularly, and party. So is it a daunting task or what to try to prevent or incentivize college students from not partying off campus? That is a very difficult thing to do, and the kinds of things that we've been discussing. So we know you're going to keep them engaged intellectually in every other way that you can. In the meantime, we've been talking about ways that we can work together, and even 2 weeks from now, as we review our COVID-19 ordinances, that there might be other amendments to those ordinances that might be of help. So we're working with the college on that. I will call very briefly on Dan Riccio and maybe Susan Herdina, who've been part of that team, and just share some of the thoughts that we have and that we've been working on. And also let me share with you, if you didn't know, council members, that our former Captain Chip Searson of the Charleston Police Department is now the acting police chief of the College of Charleston security team. So our partnership is very close at many different levels. Dan?
Yes, sir. Our goal, sir, as we discussed earlier, is to definitely strengthen the partnership with the College of Charleston, and communication is the key. We are developing an off-campus violation notification protocol, which will be a partnership between the Charleston Police Department and their officers, Livability and Tourism, and the College of Charleston. So basically, our goal is to respond quickly and reactively to incidents that occur off campus involving any College of Charleston student, and any parties or social gatherings to take place, and any violations that occur off campus. We intend to have a notification system. So when the police department is responding, and if a summons is issued or any issues at any off-campus housing, they will then notify the Department of Livability and Tourism. We will then reach out to the College of Charleston to ensure that the actual location is involving a College of Charleston student. We'll pass on all that information to the college so that they can intervene prior to any instance going to court and mitigate any off-campus violation in order to deter and to help with the spread of COVID-19.
Thank you. Susan, did you have anything you'd like to add? I don't see you out there.
I'm here, Mayor.
Okay.
Just wanted to add that obviously a few days ago, you asked us to put together a list of potential violations that could be used in the event that the conduct of the students was not consistent with city ordinances. Over the weekend, I talked to Dan. We have about 14 or 15 of them, but Dan is familiar with them and has been instrumental over the last number of years in working with the college and with the students in educating them on the various ordinances that we have. Obviously, right now, the most important being the mask ordinance, social gathering, but there are some additional ones that could be applicable to the students' conduct to try to tamp down the COVID issues. One other thing I wanted to mention is that Dan over the years has put together a really comprehensive list of the property managers or landlords of many of the rental properties around the college. And part of this protocol will be reaching out to the landlords and getting their cooperation also in working with the students so as not to increase the risk of the COVID in the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Seekings, you want to add anything from the Town and Gown Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank President Chu for coming on and giving us his report. As you know, we had a meeting with him last week with Paul Patrick, and I can just say this from listening to the college, they are prepared for what he has observed as a daunting task of having a campus open during COVID. And however we work forward, I think we've got a great partner in the college, and I look forward to having a successful fall and making this a model of how to do it as opposed to how not to do it. And I feel like the college clearly has the right person at the helm for that. So more to come. But Mr. President, thank you for spending time with us tonight and for all you're going to do and do every day to make Charleston a better and, in this day and age, safer place. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seekings, and thank you, everyone. I look forward to continued collaboration with all of you.
Great, terrific. I saw a couple other council members who would like to make remarks. Councilmember Griffin.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say, one thing about coming back has been mentioned is, gathering places for these students. But I think a lot of our hospitality industry has changed quite drastically due to COVID. So I'm excited to see all of our hospitality industry rise to this challenge to make sure that they don't allow our city to become a hotspot. I know a lot of our business owners, I've spoken with them personally, are not going to be considering themselves college bars anymore. And they're not going to allow our city to become a hotspot. So I really look forward to working with our hospitality industry to make sure that we do a good job of enforcing all of our regulations through COVID.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. I didn't want to pass up an opportunity to welcome President Xu to our gathering here. And I just have to do a little motherly bragging. President, our tenured faculty member daughter is a proud teacher in the Department of Health and Human Performance, and hearing what she has, been doing all summer long and helping to be as prepared as you possibly can to go through this kind of uncertainty. Our daughter is one of those people that likes to have everything in a plan and the plan in its place and work the plan and get to the end of, a good project. And it's been very interesting to watch, just having to live with that uncertainty, but knowing that the planning that has gone on under your leadership has been amazing to me in terms of having been a risk manager all my life. you have to plan for every, or think about every little opportunity that, the what ifs and the scenarios and the flow charts and all of that. So I think that you're as well prepared as possible. And I'm grateful as a mom that, will have a daughter in harm's way, but hopefully not. So thank you so much for your leadership.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. President Hsu, thank you for being with us today and your remarks. And we're very fortunate that you're at the helm of the College of Charleston. It's the college is part of the fabric, along with the Citadel. The city of Charleston, not the city without both of those fine institutions and the students and the faculty and staff that represent it. Mike, I have a question for you, though, that sort of a maybe multi-phase question. Is there a certain benchmark that you're looking at that you're going to be sort of forecasting as that with the numbers going up or activity taking place and behavior being college students who they are? Is there a certain benchmark you could be looking at that you're going to pivot to another direction? And do you have any suggestions on what the city could do in the event that those numbers do have a drastic rise that we should be doing differently than what we're doing now with these ordinances in place?
So thank you, Councilman Shahid. Good to see you here. We look at about 5 or 6 different parameters like positivity rate, overall new cases per day, our availability of quarantine space and isolation space, the availability of local hospital beds, and so on. So there isn't a single number that we're going to rely on, but we're going to have a holistic approach and evaluate all of those numbers. And the most likely number that would affect our ability to continue with on-campus face-to-face classes or not is probably our ability to handle the isolation and quarantine number of students in those type of situations, because even though they all have a place to stay, we have to provide them with food and other necessities. They all have to be delivered to the door and so forth. So if it becomes, if it reaches a situation where we simply cannot manage the service to the number of students who are in quarantine or isolation, then we may have to pivot to a online semester and maybe even send students home at some point. But looking at our peer institutions, even South Carolina with such a large number, over 1,000 within a week, they were still able to handle that. And our size is probably less than 1/3 of their size. So even if we even if our situation is as bad as theirs, it's still a manageable situation for us. So our hope is that we don't have to, but certainly we have several contingency plans of different levels of pivot to make changes. In fact, we just made one small pivot today that we told students that if they don't feel comfortable coming on campus, we're going to refund their deposits to the dorms, and they can still get out until next Monday, which was previously not allowed, and they were going to be charged. So those are the small pivots that we're continually making. So your last question is what can the city do to help? I think really, whether we reach those critical conditions or not, the stricter the city ordinances where we could use to influence the behavior of our students, the better we can control the behavior of our students and prevent the spreading of the virus. So, and also I think Councilman Griffin just mentioned, our hospitality industry. I mean, if the bars can truly control and not allow large group of students sit in bars without social distancing or wearing masks, that would be tremendous, because what we found from our peer institutions is that, even in coastal Carolina, at Myrtle Beach, they have that situation where some of the bars would just welcome all the students in without even checking IDs, and then the student would come in and start drinking without any social distancing and masks on. So those are type of things I think the city definitely can help.
Absolutely. Well,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you again, President Hsu. Now, just to wrap up this this section, if speaking of metrics and numbers, I'm just going to call very briefly on Tracy McKee to give us a numbers update. Tracy?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mayor. If I might, I'm going to share my screen. And I do have a few slides, but I will try to make this very, very quick because I know we are running behind. Okay. So, oh, hold on.
It was Tracy. Now we know.
Sorry. Of course, my husband just got home from work and the dogs are very excited. I locked them out. But I will try to run through this really quickly. So just really quickly, I thought this was a really interesting graphic from Johns Hopkins University. It kind of shows all the states of our country and gives really a good visual of how we are doing and how every state is doing in comparison to each other. So the redder the color, like the bigger the increase is in new cases. And the greener is they're seeing decline. So you can see South Carolina here. We are kind of a very pale red color, so a little bit on the increase, but almost neutral. So I thought this was a really interesting graphic that they have on their website that kind of puts it into perspective how we're doing as a state. So how are we doing at the local level? I think if for those of you that have been watching the numbers, they've been very volatile over the last couple of weeks. But we saw a little bit of an uptick last week, but looking at the past 7 days, it's actually come down a little bit. So this top gray line is actually the number of tests performed, and that's at Charleston County. The orange bars are new cases for a 7-day period in Charleston County. And then these dark navy blue ones are actually the city of Charleston. So you can kind of see the trend in new cases and how that compares to the number of tests performed, at least in Charleston County. So you can see a number of tests have really come down, but as well as generally, the trend has been downwards really since we've implemented the mask ordinance back in July the 1st. So kind of where are we with our current metrics? These are really the numbers and the associated color codes based on our stoplight approach. So this 1.21 of new cases per 1,000, we've really 1.0 is where this goes to green. And this has been hovering right around 1. We're still, our positivity rate is still a little bit high. According to the WHO, we really want to be at 5% of a positivity rate. and this is Charleston County. So this is going down. You all might recall that positivity rate in July was it was over 20%, very, very high. So that's actually been trending downwards as well. And the reason I show these stoplight approaches to you is because I've been getting questions of when can we move forward? When can we move forward? So I think everybody knows that we have a phased reopening plan of city offices and services that we implemented quite a long time ago. Kind of like the College of Charleston, it is intended to be data-driven and flexible approach to how we open up. It's very fluid. The information changes every day. We're learning new things every day. We're learning how to do things better in this COVID world. So how do we adapt? So our plan is very malleable, but based on data and things that we can measure. And of course, our measurables were not created in a vacuum, not by city staff. We looked around the country and at public health professionals to really create those measurements, if you will. And we're currently in phase 2 of a phase 4 plan, and we've been there since May 26th. So how do we move forward? So there aren't really any good COVID leading indicators. Everything that we have is a lagging indicator. It's really based on testing. So that becomes problematic because we don't really know what's happening until 2 to 3 weeks after cases start to after transmission rates have gone up for some reason or another. So because of that, in our plan, we don't really move to a new phase until 14 to 21 days after our metrics are in that green phase, if you will. And we've still, that 7-day growth rate it's been a little bit of a yo-yo here in the last couple of weeks, but we've stayed less than 1%, which has kept us in the green. So that's really good. And I'd mentioned this before, but just to share again, we do have an internal task force that meets weekly and to make a recommendation to the mayor. And we also discuss issues that are happening around the city and how we can improve. So really quickly, employee cases. We currently only have 1 active case. So we tend to follow what's happening in the community, which makes sense. So things seem to be very stable. We've had 120 total cases among employees, and 625 employee COVID tests have been performed. And we did have 1 hospitalization. Luckily, that was a very short-term hospitalization, but we did have 1. I think this is really important, and I'll cover these really briefly, but we really had a lot of success, and that's just because of the amazing people that we have running around the city that have just done an amazing job of keeping things going as best we can during this pandemic. So recreation, they ran summer camps from June 22nd to August 28th. Incredibly successfully. I myself was very, white knuckled, if you will, nervous about doing summer camps, as probably I imagine the folks at the college are a little nervous right now. But this was very successful. We had 80 seasonal employees for pools in the camps. They averaged 250 kids per week at summer camps. 375 per week in half-day sports camps. And the parents were very appreciative and supportive. So that was really good. Shout out to our safety and risk reduction team. I know Jan and Rick are both on the call tonight. They've done an amazing job of going to all the city offices and conference rooms and posting occupancy limits. So it's very clear how to maneuver around city offices during this time. Permit center and special facilities, they've done an amazing job. We've made accommodations to handle a very small number of folks that cannot, for some reason, do business with us digitally in the permit center. So they've handled about 20 walk-in customers per day. Initially, they were distributing about 10 masks per per day. So about 50% of the people that walked in, they've actually handed out 0 since July 17th in the Permit Center. So people have their masks. They understand that it's the rules, and everybody seems to be playing really well. Special facilities, Angel Oak had almost 3,000 patrons over this past weekend on Saturday and Sunday. They only had one mask incident. I'm using my air quotes there. So that, I feel like that's very good. At the beginning, they were handing out 200 to 300 masks per week, which was at the end of May, and now they're only giving out about 1 to 10 per week. So, so that's really great. Some of the challenges, really the biggest thing we have right now, school started, as we all know, or at least Charleston County started today, is our employees with school-aged children. We have about 479 employees with 1 or more school-aged children. So our HR department has really been working proactively to help employees understand what their options are and help them identify what options they have. So, and parents are still receiving, we're still receiving details about their specific children's situation over this past weekend. So I think we're still learning what that impact is really going to be. Everybody knows we're not out of the woods. I think we've been very stable. A little bit of uptick, like I said, last week, but other than that, it's been really stable over the past month and a half. But we are watching some of these events that have the potential for spreading COVID. So we've seen the students coming back. That's been evident with the number of permits, residential parking permits, that the activity that's being seen there. We just experienced Labor Day weekend, so we'll be looking to September 21st as kind of a day when we might start seeing some sort of uptick. We hope it's not a big uptick and maybe similar to kind of what we saw right around August 28th when we 2 weeks after we started seeing a lot of the students come back. So hopefully it'll be similar. We'll see a little uptick and then it'll come back down. But a lot of upcoming events that we have on our radar. And so with that, that's kind of out of our control, right? So if testing again becomes an issue, we want to be prepared for that. Our environmental services, fire, and PD are still receiving the prioritized testing from MUSC. One new thing is that the risk reduction team has proactively, or they're working to secure a contract with the testing lab, which is downtown, for employee testing. So if testing becomes strained again and gets delayed, we'll have this in place for all the rest of our employees. And it is available to employees and spouses that are on the city health insurance. Results will be same day or next day. Less expensive than where we've been getting the testing before, and it's going to be a lot easier for our employees that may not have a computer or smartphone. So with that, sorry if I was a little bit long. I had a couple of things I really wanted to share with you tonight, but I'm happy to entertain any questions that you all might have.
All right, any questions for Tracy and her team? They've done a remarkable job, if I may say so. All right, I don't see any questions, so let's get back. Thank you, Tracy, appreciate that update. Let's go back and get on track with our agenda, which brings us back to public hearings. And I did hear just this morning that there was a late notice that went out about the public hearings, and hence we do not plan to take any action tonight on the public hearings. But since they are on the agenda, Jennifer and Vanessa, if we have anybody that signed up and wanted to make comments on any of the numbers 1 through 4, we certainly should allow them to be heard. So do we know of anybody who signed up specifically for those items?
I have a letter here from Eli Polyakov, and it was a letter of support for Homes of Hope. It's a rezoning request. And then I'm going to, for those people who left comments, I will go through those because a couple of people, there was one person who was interested in the public hearing. And this person says it's one person and I'm against zoning and the redevelopment of number 2 Race Street. So that's under the public hearings.
Okay.
There are.
Is that all they said about it?
Yes, that's all I have on this short portion now. We've sent to city council probably the long version of what they've said.
Right.
Mayor, might we know the name of that person? Don't we normally hear the name and address of someone who makes a citizen comment at a public hearing?
You should have it. It was sent to you. I don't have it on this form, but that information was sent to you.
We did get it.
Did you get it?
I have it.
Okay, it's on your computer, council member.
Yes, no.
And if it isn't, please let me know.
I did receive it. I just thought it was a matter of public record. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so what they're doing in this regard, I am going to read some of these, and it's a portion, it's the meat of the matter. And that may be one of the ones that we have that I'm going to be reading. So I have several just to read a synopsis of what they wanted.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so the first one is 13 people are in support of the Charleston Coalition for Wireless Safety Standards. 15 people feel the smokestacks of the St. Julian Divine Center should be restored, preserved, and protected. One person supports the proposal to remove the St. Julian Divine Center smokestacks. One person does not agree with Councilmember Griffin's in-person meeting requests while amidst COVID-19 pandemic. One person asked if the city will drop the 9 community members who were arrested for defacing the John C. Calhoun statue that was eventually removed. One person demands that there be an end to police violence at protests. 5 people are against the mask mandate, and mask wearing should be optional. 8 people are against the proposed development for Riverland Oaks and Central Park on James Island until drainage and flood issues are resolved and meet the 2013 Stormwater Manual requirements. One person, and I said 8, I hope I said 8 people were against that. One person feels the city should spend development money beautifying the East Side neighborhood, i.e. plant flowers, clean the streets, etc. One person would like the city to present and update on the police substation in Gadsden Green. One person wants to know why Councilmember Griffin is so concerned about maintaining a relationship with the Washington Light Infantry and Sumter Guards. And this is the final one. It's one person feels the community member should be afforded to ask council questions about the emergency management leadership response to May 30th protests. So
Okay.
that's all I have.
Great.
And Mr. James Wilson has signed up to speak on E1.
Okay, let's, this is back to the public hearing matter number 1. So Mr. Wilson, do you want to proceed, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was only signed up to speak if there were any questions, but I understand that there are not. So thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer the questions.
Great. Well, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
With us.
we're not going to vote on these as public hearings or as second readings, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize for that, but we're just going to have to do it at the next meeting. We normally have public hearings at the second meeting. Apparently there was a little mix up. So we'll come back and redo these on the second meeting of September. But just in case somebody showed up expecting to be able to be heard, I wanted them to have that opportunity.
Correct, and we'll also keep Eli's because his would be with the next batch of those as well.
Okay.
Yes.
And so we kind of skipped over, we'll come back to citizens participation period if there are any others that wanted to be heard live. But we kind of skipped over approval of city council minutes from August 18th.
Move for approval.
I'll second.
So Mayor, those minutes are not quite done
Move
because,
for deferral.
Second.
but they will be by the end of the week.
Okay.
Staff is still working on those.
I think it was Ways and Means we got. I made the same mistake, Councilmember.
Your Ways and Means minutes were good.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
there were 2 citizens that were also signed up to speak during public hearings, Bernie Mazik under item E2 and Steve Saltzman for items E3 and E4. I didn't see the telephone numbers they registered with on the line, but they did register to speak in case they're on.
Bernie, Steve, y'all out there? Well, they must not be. Was there anyone else?
No, sir.
Okay, well, that will be the end of our citizens participation period this evening. Thank you for pulling all that together and keeping track of it all. So next is our appointment of Central Business District Improvement Commission at large.
I'm sorry, was there still going to be a citizens participation portion?
Yeah, we were just wrapping that up. Did you sign up for that?
I sure did.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I think those were only the people that signed up for the public hearings. We haven't done the actual citizen participation call-ins.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I asked for that. Jennifer, we have folks signed up for citizen participation?
Yes, sir. We have about 24 citizens that have signed up to speak.
Oh, great. So I hate to keep it short, but we're running long and we normally keep this to 30 minutes. So I'm just gonna ask everyone to please keep it to 1 minute, your remarks. And Jennifer or Vanessa, if y'all want to call out in the order signed up or whatever order you've got.
Okay, I'll call out the names. I'll call them out 3 or 4 at a time. The first one is Lenz Piper Loomis, to be followed by Amy McLeod and Melissa Enthal. She'd have to help me. So the first is Lenz Piper Loomis. Is she present? Okay, Amy McLeod. Amy McLeod. Melissa, and Melissa may have to help me with her name. It's Engdahl. Melissa. All right, number 4 is Karen Beard.
Vanessa, this is Jennifer. Both Amy and Melissa are on the call, but they have to unmute themselves.
I have just done. This is Amy.
Okay, thanks, Amy.
Yes, ma'am. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I think there was somebody before me.
There was. Is there a Lenz Piper Loomis? We don't have a telephone number for her, but
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Yes,
So I
it's
called
Lindsay Piper
you as,
Loomis.
I call Lenz as number 1, followed by Amy. And what about Melissa? Is she among you? Okay, well, Lenz and Amy. Lenz, you're first. Mayor, what are
Hi,
the
Lindsay
Is it, Mayor? Is it 30 seconds? Is it a minute? What is it?
A minute.
It's a minute.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, Lindsay Piper Loomis here. I just want to say I honor all of you and I thank you for your service. Just wanted to make you aware, my husband is 100% permanent total rating through the VA. When we've gone out to eat in downtown Charleston, we were seated at tables outdoor. Everyone was not wearing masks outside. My husband was refused service because of his service dog. So he's had the same service dog for 8 years. What we're having now in the community is that we have businesses violating federal laws when I guess due to the mask ordinance. And so I would just ask for you to consider, you know, this medical exemption and, you know, stating something regarding the situation. He's been refused service at more than 3 businesses, and you know, they're stating it's a mask, but no one sitting at the tables as we were outside were wearing masks at the table. Secondly, to consider that the suicide rates are up. Veterans who have suffered from PTSD, wearing a mask is a hazard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Amy
you.
McLeod.
All right, City Council, Mayor, we provided, Charleston Coalition for Wireless Safety Standards provided a memo to y'all. I hope everybody got it. I'm really hopeful people read it. There was an inaccuracy in there. We stated that the wireless transmission facilities on top of the Ashley House was adjacent to the VA. It's not. It's adjacent to the Medical University, the Children's Hospital. I want to give you a quick update. There is yet another city has prevailed in federal court when they were sued by a site installer, XNet versus the City of Cambridge, Massachusetts. I will provide this to you in writing at another time. On August 26th, the district court sided with the city. They required several things in their ordinance, and I'm making this short because I'm looking at my clock telling me I'm about to run out of time. They required a lot of things in their ordinance that we can also require in our ordinance, and we will prevail in federal court. We will provide this to you in writing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You're good. Just a minute.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so the next person is Melissa Endall. I may be pronouncing her name wrong. It's Engdahl. Melissa?
I'm here.
Melissa. Okay, well, you can pronounce that for us, so we'll get it right next time.
Engdahl.
Okay, I almost had it. Okay. Okay. You can speak now.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you so much for listening and your attention. I'm speaking as a member of the Charleston Coalition for Wireless Safety Standards. I am a 16-year camp counselor at Camp Happy Days. I started doing this because when I was 12 years old, my best friend died of osteosarcoma tumor. And when I first started at Camp Happy Days, we barely had any children that had cancer in this area. But now we are at capacity. There are hundreds of children that have cancer in this area now. As you know, you may have heard, there are clusters in Dunes West, Park West, Rivertown, you know, St. Jude, St. Baldrick's, MUSC. They're all expanding. They're all trying to help. But one thing that I ask is for you to please consider looking more into 5G towers. They are not safe. They're trying to get onto school campuses, onto parks and recs, onto playgrounds, onto places that children are trying to be safe. And
complete your sentence.
Please look into 5G safety. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, next is Karen Beard, followed by Laura Viviano and Rita Karzurkis. Karen Beard.
Yes, this is Karen. Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the Charleston Coalition for Wireless Safety Standards as well. Our members are reading articles and scanning the web for possible options regarding 5G. And I would like to share one of those options with you tonight because Charleston parents do not want 5G antennas in their neighborhoods. This is the option I want to share. The 5G spectrum has a high, a medium, and a low band. The low band frequencies are not as fast as the high band, but they are faster than 4G, and they travel much greater distances than higher and medium bands. Since they travel greater distances, there's no need to place the antennas in neighborhoods. The towers can be placed a far distance from homes and still achieve 5G service. One telecom carrier in our area now is running 5G on a low band spectrum. We placed this question on the table tonight and asked our city council to explore this question. The question is, can low band spectrum be used for Charleston's suburban neighborhoods rather than medium or high bands, thus eliminating the need for small cell antennas in residential neighborhoods? We ask you to consider this Thank you, Council and Mayor.
Okay. Laura Viviano.
Vanessa, the
Laura.
telephone.
Okay, was that Laura? Okay, so Rita Karzurkis. I'm being challenged today. Rita Karzurkis, it's Kazirkis. All right. Number 7 is Franny Henty.
Vanessa, Rita is actually on the line. If she could unmute herself.
Okay.
I think
Okay, you're on, Rita.
All righty. Thank you again for your time here. We just heard from the college how they're working to implement measures to control the spread of COVID. And I'm sure that they would not deal kindly with repeat offenders. As some of you may know, I'm at the Battery almost every weekend protesting some guys with their Confederate flags. Now, when we're out there, we noticed that the gentlemen there not only refused to wear their masks, which is okay because there's an exemption, but they also repeatedly refused to maintain a 6-foot distance. Now, there's police out there every single weekend, and those police refuse to do a darn thing to enforce the ordinance also. One of the police last week explained to me that he complained that I wasn't complaining when Black Lives Matter was burning down the city, and that's why he wasn't enforcing the mask ordinance. Another time, a captain just walked to his car and refused to talk to me. So because this is an important matter during this pandemic, I'm asking, as the colleague suggested, to be adaptable, and I'm asking the council to please enforce the passive park ordinance where you can refuse activities on a temporary basis in that park that is already classified as a passive. It is a pandemic, and I'm asking you.
Thank you, Rita.
Okay, next is Franny Henty, followed by
Thank
Michael McPherson. Okay, Franny.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your service. And we hired Dr. Emmerman to tell us how exactly the Central Park Cluster subdivision by the Crescent Homes wouldn't cause more flooding harm in our area. In addition to Dr. Emmerman's important finding that Central Park Cluster Stormwater Plan design is not in compliance with the 2013 stormwater guidelines, if the city permits the building of the subdivision contiguous to properties that already flood due to poor maintenance and insufficient pipe and the system inadequately serviced over decades and presently by the county, the state, and the city, our common enemy doctrine rights will be infringed upon. In South Carolina, the common enemy doctrine right water law follows that it is what is known as common enemy doctrine. Landowners can dispose of surface water, which is everyone's common enemy, providing it doesn't create nuisance for a neighboring landowner. The particular developer has a history of flooding out other contiguous neighbors in the county. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Michael McPherson. Michael. Okay, Harriet Rivas. Harriet Rivas.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
First of all,
hello, this is Michael. Oh, sorry.
First of all, I'd like to say that my hat is off to all of you for your service to the city. I've been following the meetings since early this afternoon, and you really do a great job. Thank you. Number one, I support removing the cluster ordinance from the zoning code. There are just too many problems with it. Next, I am opposed to the accessory dwelling units ordinance because it may mean in some instances that you are not supporting the density figures as written in the zoning code. And finally, I ask that you stop any permitting on the Central Park cluster. Our consultant, Dr. Emmerman, who has 40 years experience in the field of hydrology, has found that the 2013 stormwater manual has not been followed. He also recommends that no developments occur until the Central Park Basin recommendations are implemented and proven to work. Thank you. And again, thank you very sincerely for your service.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Michael. had an issue unmuting.
Okay, Michael McPherson. Okay,
Yes.
you ready, Michael? Okay.
Okay, from the founding of our nation and still today, people have come here for religious freedom. During the first initial shutdown, we saw churches called non-essential, and the right to peacefully assemble and the government staying out of our churches was in question here. I have the religious freedom to congregate in the church without the government coming in and wanting to fine people for not wearing a mask with these mandates. I believe that we should stop these mandates and these fines. We're starting to look like California. I think they should be taken completely away and let the people decide whether or not they want to wear masks. And if people want to wear them, they can wear them. If they don't want to wear them, then they don't have to. I don't think the government should force it on people. You know, we are the governed and y'all are the government. And therefore, we have given y'all the power to enforce, to not enforce these fines and mandates, because otherwise you're not protecting our rights.
Okay, thank you, Time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so next will be Megan Flower, followed by Whitney Renario. Megan Flower, are you here? Whitney Renario. All right, Selena Ramsey. Carol Green. Everton Jacobs.
Vanessa, Carol is on the line and she's been asked to unmute.
Okay, so that will be Carol Green.
Yes, this is Carol.
Okay,
Can
Carol.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I live in Marlboro subdivision on James Island, which is in the city. And with every new development, the flooding of our property is increasing. This is most evident recently in the development of Fleming Park on Fleming Road. You see, the 2013 stormwater regulations were not followed regarding not exceeding the downstream capacity. Yet now here we are again with the proposed Central Park cluster, and the engineers are telling us that the models work. But the hydrologist hired to complete the independent study that concluded that the 2013 stormwater regulations again are not being followed. I would like to ask you to please consider delaying any further permitting on the Central Park cluster until the Central Park Basin study is completed and implemented to see if it actually works. We need to know if the recommendations work as implemented, because if they don't, we're going to continue to have damage on our properties. And the 2013 stormwater regulations also say that there should not be damage to the current property owners. Let me say one last thing. I'm just asking you to put first things first. Let's get the flooding resolved so that we can have a win-win here for the Marlboro and Laurel Park residents and the Central Park.
Okay, so the next person is Everton Jacobs.
Hello, hi, I'm Selena. I had to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, Selena. Okay.
Okay.
So you're above Carol, so you go on and then I'll follow up with Everton.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Sorry, it's *6 to everybody that needs to unmute themselves when your time is ready. So I'm actually calling in to thank you all for the work that you're doing and to ask that you not renew any mask mandate. As of today, there have only been 241 COVID deaths in Charleston County. I believe as an American personally, I'm concerned that the mask mandates infringe upon my right to make a choice and to assess the risk that COVID brings to my family and I. I believe that people should take the information given to them regarding the outbreak, the virus or pandemic or whatever you want to call it, and decide what's in our best interest to stay safe and healthy. And I want the choice to wear a mask or not. Professionally speaking, as a public health communication expert, I'm concerned at the level of misinformation and the lack of a coordinated public health response and appropriate communication to the public about the viral load, the viral spread, precautions, treatment, and death stats. Just last week, the CDC lowered the deaths attributed to COVID to a little over 9,000. I'm sure you all saw that. It dropped from over 100,000 to 9,000. The other deaths were mostly from older adults with pre-existing comorbidities such as diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. And that's the real problem that we should be focused on. I'm going to wrap up by saying I pulled my 4-year-old out of Oakland Academy because the school.
Okay. And Vanessa, Whitney Renero has also joined. She was speaker number 11.
Yes, I have her. Okay, so Whitney is now going to speak. Okay, I'm ready. Whitney?
Yes, am I ready?
Okay, you're on.
Can you tell me how much time we have?
1 minute.
1 minute.
Okay, you're wasting yours. Look, you start talking.
Okay, on August the 17th, the 20th, and the 27th, there were documents containing links to scientific studies and articles about mask wearing in relationship to the transmission of the virus that were emailed to all of you. If you can take a look at those, you'll be able to make an educated and an informed decision about mask wearing based on science, not guesswork, and modeling. I want to give just a personal example. My brother-in-law, who is in his late 20s, he lives in Florida and works as an assistant chef in a small restaurant. He's been required to wear a mask at work, and he works very long hours. One day after work, he went home, took off his mask, and collapsed. His heart stopped. His mother gave him CPR, but was unable to revive him. When the EMTs arrived, they gave him a shot of adrenaline in his heart, and they were able to bring him back. And doctors concluded that this collapse was due to a lack of oxygen and that his lungs had been overstressed. I think you need to take a look at this because anyone can see that these two things are related. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try again. Everton Jacobs. All right. Christopher King. Christopher King. LaTanya Gamble.
Vanessa, Christopher is on. If everyone could press *6 when it's their time to talk.
Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Christopher King. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to, Christopher King, the Preservation Society, I want to speak on behalf of the Preservation Society and Historic Charleston Foundation. We've reached out multiple times to the city in order to try and help on the smokestacks and have been unable to get a response. So want to tell council directly that we stand ready to help, and we're grateful for the 2 weeks and appreciate your thoughtful discussion. The key takeaway that we heard is there's nothing that we can do for this hurricane season. And I know we can't kick the can down the road regarding safety, but we can move forward deliberately. And we believe that a second opinion is the only way to ensure that we're making the right decision. We have offered to fund this, and we feel strongly that it's a necessity. We have an engineer and we're ready to go, and we think this is critical. We've heard from so many about how important these smokestacks are. We've gathered over 1,200 signatures asking for a better outcome. And we really want to work together with council and with the city on a project for this neighborhood that we can all be proud of, and we stand ready to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Okay, LaTanya Gamble. Is LaTanya out there? All right, Theodosia Wade.
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, so which one are you, LaTanya or Theodosia?
Theodosia.
Okay.
I'm part of Laurel Park community, and we are asking my neighbors and I that the city of Charleston not permit the Central Park Cluster project. Given the fact that the stormwater infrastructure in our area is not properly documented, and in places its maintenance and condition is so poor that it already floods in our streets and in our homes. We have Lake Mohawk when it rains, and it doesn't have to rain much. The stormwater expert that we hired, Dr. Emmerman, found that the 2013 stormwater guidelines were not followed for this project, and we recommend that the city should wait for the Central Park Basin study to be implemented and tested and field tested again to be sure that it's working before permitting on any development occurs. And let me say thank you so much to the city, and I so enjoyed listening to the judge and the other people getting the awards. I was just very proud to be a part of this city. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Time. Okay, Tyler Jones. Is Tyler Jones available?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Tyler Jones. I represent Charleston Cares. That's the Carriage Association for Responsible Equine Safety. We're made up of the 3 largest carriage companies in the city: Palmetto Carriage Works, Charleston Carriage Works, and Old South Carriage Company. We fully support the clean new hitching ordinance that's up for second reading tonight. That's Section L, Item 9. This is a common sense step that we have already implemented ourselves voluntarily, and we worked with Dan Riccio at the city to see that this was put into the ordinance for all carriage companies in the interest of safety. We pride ourselves on being held to a very high standard, and we believe that this new ordinance is a significant step towards meeting that standard that we've set for ourselves. So I urge you to support this ordinance and give it second and third reading tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Susan Milliken. Susan Milliken.
I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, you may start.
Good evening, Mayor Tecklenburg and City Council members. For several months now, residents of Marlboro and Laurel Park neighborhoods have been concerned about the Central Park cluster proposal of 38 homes. The reason why is because right now when it rains on James Island, these neighborhoods severely flood. The Aspire apartments were built across the street. That is 135 units. Another cluster neighborhood is nearby with 30 homes about to be under construction. The residents have known that their stormwater and wastewater infrastructure cannot handle any more homes. But an expert hydrologist recently confirmed this in a well-written report. We ask that the Central Park cluster proposal not be approved at this time, be delayed until recommendations for flooding fixes can be implemented. Additionally, we ask that the cluster zoning be removed from the Sea Islands, that is James and John's Islands. And thank you so much. And just as a last note, Vanessa, thank you so much for your service over the years. We so appreciate you. And please save the iconic smokestacks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Julia Lane Napolsky. Julia Lane Napolsky.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you, Julia.
Hey, everybody. All right. This is Julia Lane Napolsky. I am a resident homeowner on the east side, and I would like to echo what Chris King said earlier about the second opinion of the smokestacks at St. Julia and Divine. I've lived on the peninsula for over 10 years. I own a business here in the downtown district, and I've lived on the east side as a homeowner for over 2.5 years now. I used to work for the historic Charleston Foundation and as a tour guide in the city, so I'm deeply ingrained in both the tourism and the resident side of this city. I strongly oppose the current setup of the city being able to disregard the excellent BAR process that the rest of us follow for our homes and businesses by way of having a city staff member make a decision on what would happen with these smokestacks and off one solo engineering request. I definitely think we need to have another one.
Time. Okay, so next is Megan Flower. Is Megan on the line? Megan Flower. Okay, Jennifer Trudeau. Jennifer Trudeau.
She's on the line.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. You can start.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say regarding the mask mandate that I don't feel like there are any justifiable grounds to renew the mask mandate. South Carolina DHEC has recently given a report indicating that certain masks like bandanas and neck gaiters can actually make things worse as opposed to wearing nothing at all because of the way that it aerosolizes coughs and sneezes. There's no uniformity with the ordinances, so people don't wear their masks correctly. They wear the wrong type of masks, or the people who are exempt from wearing them So there's a whole host of people who are not necessarily wearing them correctly. And given that, we can't even measure the accuracy and the efficacy of these masks. So given that, I don't think that we should be renewing the mandate. I also want to speak to people who are going through discrimination against their different disabilities and things. I think that people need to, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next is Jennifer O'Brett. Is there a Jennifer O'Brett? Okay, the final one is Selena Ramsey.
And I think that's just a duplicate, Vanessa. I think that's all.
Okay, all right. Well, that's it, Mayor.
My name is Jessica Plew, and I called in. I didn't hear my name on the list.
Okay, so what is your name?
Jessica Plew.
Okay, so Jessica, you're not on this list, but
Please allow them 1 minute.
yes.
I'm Abby Firestein. I called in also.
Okay, who's going to start? Please give me your name.
Hello. I let Abby do it.
Okay, so Jessica, was Jessica the person who was going to speak?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Since we're so focused on science, I just wanted to state some studies. This is on the WHO's website, and I quote, "Prolonged wearing of the surgical mask causes loss of intellect potential and cognitive performance due to a decrease in blood oxygen and subsequent brain hypoxia. Note, some changes may be irreversible." That is on the advice for the use of masks in a wider community setting during home care and healthcare settings in the context of novel coronavirus. Next study can be found on the National Institutes of Health government website, PubMed article 7087880. High breathing resistance made it difficult for the subject to breathe and take in sufficient oxygen. So shortage of oxygen stimulates the sympathetic nervous system and increases heart rate, which is why you will see an increase in strokes this winter. Third study, 70% of the patients showed a reduction in partial pressure oxygen and 19% developed various degrees of hypoxemia. Wearing an N95 mask significantly reduced. Thank you.
You're welcome. And was the final person Selena? Was that Selena, Jennifer?
No, Selena already spoke. There is another citizen who said that they wanted to speak.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I had called in. Abby Firestein is my name.
Abby?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the last name?
Firestein.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I work at a small local business downtown, and we have been affected greatly by COVID-19. This mandate has made the citizens of Charleston divided and has brought out the worst in people. It is not my job or my responsibility to police people to wear a mask. And this is something I am now expected to do at my job, and it is made for a hostile work environment. Our local leaders have given citizens the illusion that it is okay to discriminate against people, including children, if they see them without a mask. People are so angry over this that they are getting verbal and physical fights, and it's dangerous. The mask is a symbol of comfort for people, and most aren't wearing them properly. The logic and science does not support this, and it seems that if it makes sense, it does, as long as it makes people comfortable, it doesn't have to make sense. If we sacrifice our freedom for temporary security, we will lose both. This mandate has opened a door to a slippery slope. We cannot have government dictating medical practices. Other countries have had mask mandates. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to all the citizens who took the time to share with us, and appreciate that very much. So we're going to move on with our other item under petitions and communications, which was the appointments of Central Business District.
Move for approval.
Commission at large members. Do I have any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 And I will initially thought I might get a report to you about the ongoing meetings of the Central Business District Improvement Commission. They've been meeting weekly, but I'm going to hold that until our next meeting because we're running on in time. So next would be our council communications. First up is to discuss amendment of our city's single family zoning categories to eliminate the opportunity for owners to submit a concept plan of development under the current so-called cluster subdivision definition. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I really am sensitive to our time. And actually, I listened to a podcast this week on how to manage and host and get the most out of a meeting setting, especially in today's workforce generation, which I'm not part of. So I know I'm guilty of running on about a topic that I care about. But the suggestion that I picked up on in this podcast was you should not have a meeting topic on your agenda if you can't ask a question around it and expect the discussion to focus in on answering the question. So on that basis, my question of my council colleagues tonight is, can you or will you agree with me that we can task the legal and planning staff, who I've already consulted, to come back to the council with a first reading amendment that would allow us to consider whether it's time to eliminate section 16 of our zoning code that deals with basically giving single family zoning the opportunity to have cluster subdivisions as a by right concept plan of development. So that's
I
my
move to agree with you, Councilmember Jackson.
Second.
Yeah,
Let's see what it looks like.
all right.
I
great.
agree.
I will take that as consensus. I've been enjoying discussing it with you. I have maps that the planning staff have created to show where land parcels are sort of left for cluster type development based on the current code. And I look forward to having the conversation in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, while I don't disagree with Councilmember Jackson, but I think it's inappropriate to bring this before the committee of the whole without it going through the appropriate standing committee, which is the Community Development Committee. I think that there needs to be some discussion in that committee, and that committee can make its recommendations accordingly. I think bring it before the body of the whole, before discussion in a standing committee, is not following protocol.
I'm happy to make that part of the process, council member. And thank you for the suggestion that you gave to me early on. So that works for me.
All right. So,
so my motion is really to defer and send to the Community Development Committee for discussion.
Well, legal still has to draft it, no matter what.
Yeah, I don't think we really have to have a motion and a vote. My understanding of council communications is it's for discussion and a consensus. So I'm happy to cooperate with the process, Councilmember Gregory in particular, with your suggestions. And I just want to bring this as an amendment to the zoning code whenever it's appropriate, that the staff, and I don't want to drag our feet out on it. So I would appreciate having it at the next CD committee if that's the consensus between the mayor and the legal office and the planning staff. That would be fine with me.
Right.
I just want to move this on.
Gotcha. Any further discussion? So without objection, Gianna Shaw Johnson, if you're on the call, please put this on the next agenda for community development and planning. If y'all would take a look at the ordinance and see what would be required in order to amend it to this effect. And we'll discuss.
You got the chairman here, Mr. Mayor.
What's that?
You've got the chairman of the Community Development Committee on the call. I'm sure he'll put it on the agenda.
Without his objection, of course.
Mayor, and I'll confer with Jack
and we'll get it done. Thank you.
All right, sounds good.
Thank
So
you very
next-
much.
Any other comments on this one?
No.
Okay, so next
Mr. Mayor.
discussion to amend emergency ordinance 2020-090 to remove the 9 o'clock curfew on amplified music. Councilmember Griffin.
Yes, sir. And if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I think I can consolidate a lot of these 5. Numbers 3 and number 6 were both covered in public safety, so they can be discussed in that report. They don't need to be discussed twice. Number 4, I would ask for your permission, Mr. Mayor, to wait till the next meeting to talk about. And so really, I would only like to talk about numbers 2 and 5 right now, if possible.
I don't think you'll hear any objection from council.
Number 2 is honestly, I was just really optimistic after looking at Tracy's numbers and seeing since July 1st how our numbers and our cases have gone down dramatically, drastically, whatever word you want to use as an optimism. And being cautiously optimistic, I thought it might be a good idea to try getting rid of the 9 p.m. amplified and seeing if the numbers stay down. Obviously, if they spike, I'd be the first person to say, let's bring it back. But start giving our businesses back a few things and seeing if they can control it, they can still police it, and the numbers don't spike. You know, I think this would be a really good thing for them. And then if the governor were to open things back up even more, we wouldn't have this different curfew than on the state level. So I was just hoping that this could be our first test of, can our hospitality industry and are our people going to comply? And if the numbers don't spike up, you know, then that's a good win for the business community again. So that's where my heart's coming from on that one.
Gotcha. Would anyone like to chime in? Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, I think that right now we're in a situation where things are in fact working in terms of our decline. While I don't disagree with Councilman Griffin, I would look at it a little differently. Why don't we do it this way, okay? And let's reverse it. Why don't we hold off on changing the curfew to 11 to see what the effects will be within the next 2 weeks with regard to Labor Day weekend, the college going back in, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't we see whether or not, if it goes down, okay, let's not see whether or not it spikes. If it goes down in the next 2 weeks, Councilman Griffin, then I think we would have a much better argument that perhaps we could raise the curfew until 11, as opposed to raising it to 11, okay, not knowing the effects of the mass gatherings that have taken place within the last weekend, as well as the college coming back, and a number of other activities that I think that Tracy highlighted during her presentation. So I would do it just the opposite. I'd make it participatory. Folks, if you want us to go to 11, then let's make sure that these numbers go down first. Let's get the numbers down first. And if the numbers go down within the next couple of weeks, Councilman Griffin, then I think your argument would be much stronger to raise the curfew from 9 to 11. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just disagreeing perhaps with the timing and how we should look at it. Let's reverse it. Let's not wait for the spike. If it goes down within the next 2.5 weeks, then I think you've got a solid argument to go to 11. Let's make it the bars, the businesses, the students, everybody, okay, participate to make sure that things go down within the next couple of weeks, as opposed to just going forward now and saying we're going to raise it to 11 when we know wearing the mask, okay, has been very, very positive in terms of bringing our numbers down. I think it's important for us to make sure that, okay, we try to keep the numbers down. So if the businesses, the bars, the college kids, and all of us do what we're supposed to be doing, and we see that by our next council meeting that the numbers are still going down, trending down, then I think, you know, I'd be in a position to consider supporting your recommendation. But right now, I think we're doing it opposite. I would do it the opposite way. Just throwing it out.
Thank you, Councilmember Gregory. And I would concur also on the practical matter, Councilmember Griffin, that we're just discussing this tonight. And when we passed that ordinance, it was passed in effect through late September after our next meeting. So it was intended that we would review all those ordinances and either renew or make amendments when we meet on September 22nd. And right now, you know, as President Chu so eloquently shared with us, is a real critical time with the students coming back, with our own public schools going back in session as well. So it's not time to take the foot off the gas just yet. Although this isn't a big, this is just a tweak. When you brought it up at our last meeting, I was sympathetic to aligning the time. I think Councilmember Gregory's advice is wise. Any other comments or suggestions? Councilmember Seekins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I think you used the right word, tweak. You know, where we are right now, I hope it's something we do at the next meeting, is we got a little bit of winners and losers. You know, Councilmember Gregory talks about curfew. What I think Councilmember Griffin is asking for is just the relaxing of the 9 to 11 in terms of music. It doesn't change where people are. And here's one of the things that one of the natural unintended consequences we'll have with students coming in. And I think one of the things we'll talk about at the next meeting from President Chu's conversation is what happens when the students come around and they go off campus to have these big parties. Well, if you shut down music at 9 o'clock and people want to go and hear music and gather and party, where are they going? They're going to go to places where we don't have compliance, where we don't have an entire industry that's looking at each other and trying to make sure we have compliance. They're going to go into private homes. So I think that creates the level playing field, and we don't have that inherent inconsistency. The other thing is, I mean, this weekend I couldn't go, but Michelle went to a wedding where the live music went till 11 o'clock, and it was right next door to a bar restaurant in the city that had to shut down at 9 o'clock. So again, just an inconsistency where I think that we probably can do a little bit better. And we'll know by the next meeting where we are. So I support putting the level playing field out there. And as long as the numbers are good, the level playing field of 11 looks good. If the numbers look bad, we'll have a completely different conversation, right? We'll be talking about different times. So right. I think you bring up a good point, and I'm in favor of at least making sure it's on the agenda for the next meeting.
I concur. All right. Any further discussion on this one? Councilmember Sacron.
Thank you, Mayor. So is the plan to try to get this on the next agenda for the 22nd of September?
It will be.
All right.
Yes.
And I think the point I'd like to make just briefly, and I know we're pressed for time, is, you know, looking at the data, you know, assuming that the curfew does anything for the health and safety is one thing. I do think the mask ordinance has helped. I do think the social distancing and all of the health measures we have in place, but to suggest that the curfew, and if there's any evidence to prove otherwise, is doing anything positively, I'd love to see that. So I don't want to set ourselves up for a false narrative in 2 weeks. Basically, if the numbers do go up, we're going to point to the curfew. And I will say that the curfew does nothing, particularly when we have municipalities around us that are beating to their own drums. Folks are leaving bars at 9 or 10 o'clock and going across the river. So the curfew, in my opinion, has done absolutely nothing to help from a health and safety standpoint. I think if we want to look at the data, we want to look at the evidence, it's been the masks, it's been the social distancing, and it's been, you know, taking care of our, you know, washing our hands. So all I'm saying is I don't want to set ourselves up to look at the data in 2 weeks to say, you know, we're not going to revisit the curfew. I think that's one thing that we should look at. but we should base that decision on the data that we have in place.
I'll commit to y'all that we'll bring it to council as a change from 9 to 11.
And one last piece, I'm sorry, Mayor, that I do want to just acknowledge. You know, this past weekend, I've heard from several folks, you know, midnight, 11 o'clock, thousands of people in the streets with no masks. I think it's incumbent upon us as council members to simply be honest with our citizenry. And that is that if we have tried to change the culture of folks in Charleston in terms of wearing masks, I think we've done a good job of that. And I apologize for my dog barking in the background. But I think it's disingenuous of us to say that we're going to enforce this. It has been unenforceable. We've had 0 tickets written. I've spoken to folks in PD, and basically their time and resources doing this, they have better things to be doing. So, and I'm not saying that we have not changed the culture. I think the mask ordinance has changed the culture and behavior. And if that's the goal, then I think we've done that. But to suggest that we are going to continue to enforce this, we're just fooling ourselves. And I think as council members and as politicians and as public officials, I think we sometimes put things on the books just to make ourselves feel better. And this is the curfew is one of them. I'm not talking about the mask ordinance, but the curfew is one of those items where I feel we just check the box because it makes us feel better. That's all I have.
All right. So we have been writing some tickets, but that's a different matter. So Councilmember Griffin, do you want to go now to number 5?
Number 5, and honestly, I've thought more about this over the last week. I was thinking I'd like to change that to the first meeting in October, but I think that with having a month to plan logistically, whether it be the Gilliard or the Dock Street, every other municipality and local government around us is meeting in person. I think we've got to do more, and we've got to do it too. So I support it, and I ask that you all support it too. It's just not the same on Zoom, and you know, if all these other municipalities can face their citizens, I think we should be able to as well.
I think that's an excellent suggestion.
I agree.
And I appreciate that you are moving it back to October 8th, because I do hear, you know, our clerk of council's office and the IT and the whole.
Realistically, I would say a month is a good amount of time to plan.
Yeah, thank you. I would hope and pray that we can be ready to meet in person. I do think it's a loss to not have that opportunity.
Any other?
And Mr. Mayor, I'm only speaking to Ways and Means and City Council. I think that, you know, I think there's a lot to be said about some of these committee meetings being on Zoom. I think that there's some benefit to that, but I think definitely the council and Ways and Means committees are so important that if we can possibly meet in person, if it's logistically possible, I'd love to see that happen.
Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And initially, I brought this back up several months ago, thinking that we could safely have council meetings by a distance spread out and use the Gilliard as our landing place. I want to bring everybody's attention to a couple of things that have changed since then. And we've been pretty good in getting our numbers reduced by, look at the zip codes and the ordinances that we have passed have had some impact on keeping these numbers down. But as Tracy pointed out to us, we were not red zone yet, but sort of a amber red that's pointing out and our numbers not have gone down significantly enough. Several things are going to happen. School started today. Public school started today. We just heard from the president of the College of Charleston at some point in the immediate future, his students are coming back to be in-person classes. The activities of our community is going to be more congested than what we had experienced over the summer. Councilmember Seekings has just gone through some medical treatment. He will be a vulnerable person if he is forced or required to attend a council meeting in person. In addition, we have several staff members who we call upon, not just the clerk's office, but other staff members who we call upon to come and attend to these meetings. We're not ready for it yet. And it also sends a bad signal to folks that we are out of a danger zone. We're still in the pandemic. Look at the numbers nationwide as to where we are with this, and statewide with this. We're controlling it to some degree. We're doing pretty well to some degree, but there's several members of council who are over the age of 50. I just turned 65 in July, and I think Councilwoman Ware is pushing right behind me, and don't want to call out too many of our elderly members of council, but we are in that category, and we have got to be careful because we're putting not only ourselves in danger, we're putting our staff in danger as well, and to do that for appearances is just not a smart move at this point. So let's see where we are. Let's wait and see with this new change coming down, with classes starting back in full swing with our elementary and high school students. Let's see when the College of Charleston gets back into full swing, how these numbers pan out. There's a few more markers I want to watch before we get back into a meeting in person. Just, my mother would say, just because somebody else jumped off a bridge doesn't mean you have to jump off the bridge as well. Just because other councils are meeting in person doesn't mean that's what we need to be doing well. We need to be smart about all of this and take in consideration the danger this poses to folks. Let's be patient with this. Let's see where October comes when our numbers are, and then let's revisit this at some point later on down this calendar year. Thank you.
So if I may remind y'all, Tracy shared with you at the end of her remarks how the city actually has been doing more to keep our employees safe and our citizens safe. We are one of the few organizations I know of that really followed the CDC recommendations that were presented by President Trump in April to heart. And we came up with this phased opening approach that we've been following ever since. And we're still in phase 2 of 4 phases. And we've been following that protocol, and I think to good effect. You saw that we only have right now 1 employee who's COVID positive. And so I also did check, Councilmember Griffin and council members, on the technology of us doing a hybrid, because we do have some folks who would like to attend the meeting who might not be, whose health might be compromised, and they don't want to come to a physical meeting. And it is hard for us from a technological point of view to do more than just put up a live stream on YouTube. To have a more interactive thing like we do now in combination with an in-person meeting becomes pretty difficult. You have to have a microphone for everybody, a camera for everybody. We have that by virtue of providing our own computers. So the logistics of running a hybrid is very difficult. And so if you go back to in-person, you basically go all the way. And I'd be curious, I didn't get the numbers from her, but Jennifer, did you have a chance to look at how many people have been actually giving us public input?
Yes, sir. Since we started our meetings virtually at the end of March through our last meeting in August, we've had a combination of citizens submit comments online, by telephone, and at the meeting. And the total just for those meetings is 859. By comparison, in 2019, we only had 318 in total for the whole year.
So in a way, by being virtual, we've expanded our input from our citizens, given them more opportunities to give us their comments and their input. So, I mean, there's actually been some pluses to this. I want to try to maintain what we can of those different options as we go back to an in-person meeting. And some of it's difficult, particularly the live presentation as we did. And so anyway, I think we should stay the course and follow our regimen that we've established. It's been very successful, and continue to watch it. But anyway, Councilmember Waring, you wanted to be recognized.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I certainly understand you and Councilman Shaib. But our Congress meets in person. Our Senate, the U.S. Senate meets in person. The only reason our General Assembly is not meeting in person is because their sessions are over and they still come in special sessions to pass the budget in person. I think we need to start making preparations. I don't know whether it's a month, but I definitely think we're going to be voting on our budget certainly in November and December. Getting back into the public square is part of our democracy. If we can go to Home Depot and Costco and the grocery store and the drugstore, there's only one caveat that Councilman Shaid said that there's no doubt about it, I would agree with. My colleague and yours, Councilman Sheeking, has certainly got a big challenge. We all in prayers with him on beating that challenge. And I certainly want to have my desk mate return back in good health. That said, we need to plan to meet in person, Mr. Mayor. When I saw a couple of months ago, I actually made mention of that. When I saw Governor Cuomo spread his team out when they were going through the height, quite frankly, of the pandemic in New York, before anybody got a grip on and handling what to do and safe spacing and mask and all of that, he led by example. And I had a pretty good talk with Councilman Gregory today on this one. And I'll never forget, I think it's nothing on this Zoom meeting, nobody has a mask on for obvious reasons. But we lead by example. And I'll never forget during Hugo, when people wasn't leaving town, and Mayor Rowley got out on the front porch of City Hall and pleaded with people to leave. At the same time, he had people putting plywood up at the windows on City Hall. And that image, let me tell you, that image sent a message throughout Charleston. Everybody didn't leave, but a lot of them had left because nobody had seen City Hall boarded up like that in modern times. That's the threat that was headed to us. But by example, we've got, we have to have that picture out there with us when we have a microphone and we're not talking with that mask on it. We passed emergency ordinance for people to adhere to the same guidelines you spoke to, Mr. Mayor, that we all support. So I think we need to begin to make plans to meet in person. I don't know whether 30 days is the right amount of time, but I would certainly pray that we would be doing it by November when we start talking on passing the budget that is probably one of the most important budgets in a long time in the history of Charleston. And that should not be on Zoom, that should be in person. There would be only one reason I would continue to support doing this on Zoom. And I agree with Councilman Griffin, the committee meetings working extremely well on Zoom. The only reason would be to get my desk mate back in good health. That would be the only reason. That said, I know we can do this. We put a man on the moon and brought him back. And when the world said you didn't do it, I don't believe it. We did it a second time to make sure everybody proves. So we can do that as a country. The city of Charleston can show government can practice safe spacing with a mask in proper order in the public square. So thank you. So I'm in favor of making plans now to meet in person.
Understood. Councilmember Appel. You're on mute.
Sorry. I tend to agree with Councilmember Waring here. I think that the goal and the aspiration needs to be for us to get together as soon as it's safe to do so. I mean, it's, I'm going before the Charleston County Planning Commission for a workshop on behalf of a client on Monday, and they're meeting in person. This can be done. It can be done safely. Of course, we need to make sure that we're looking out for and protecting our fellow council members and staff. And we got to do this safe, and we got to do it the right way. But these are issues that can be solved. There's examples all over the country. People with a whole lot less are able to do it. And I think it sends the right psychological message to the community that we're learning to live with this virus that, guess what, guys, is not going anywhere. I mean, COVID is going to be with us into 2021. They're already talking about, the 2021 football season having to deal with COVID. So, I mean, it can't just be that COVID keeps us on Zoom indefinitely. We have to find a way to make this work. And even when we get the vaccine, we've heard from the anti-maskers. Wait till you hear from the anti-vaxxers, because they're going to be calling in and writing in and emailing in and Facebooking in. So this isn't going anywhere for a long time. We've got to find a way to strike an appropriate balance. I think I would love to have our committee meetings stay on Zoom until Lenny Krawcheck and Judge Fields' age. I think that's the way to do it for forever. But for our council meetings, for the #1 city, not just in South Carolina, but in the world, for us to show that we're able to meet together and do the business of the city during some critical times, I think is a goal we all have to share. Let's not rush it. Let's do it right. We've got a very competent, capable staff. Let's make it happen.
Thank you. And it's not that we haven't thought about it or made plans. I mean, that's part of phase 4. We just hadn't gotten there yet, folks. But I hear you loud and clear. We'll drill down and plan a little better, or start to make some provisional plans. I don't think it would be practical for us to meet here at City Hall, just because of the space of our chambers has been analyzed by our safety team, and they just don't think that what we would consider a reasonable number of people could safely distance in that room. So, you would likely meet at the Gilliard or at the Dock Street Theater, but probably the Gilliard, where we could have even more room to spread out. So we'll start looking at that. I don't know a time frame. I'm really I'll feel better at the end of September if the numbers stay at least even what they are right now. You saw Tracy's chart about the different events and openings that are happening right now, along with Labor Day weekend. Let's get to the end of at least to the next meeting, to the end of September, and I think it'd bring us some comfort about phasing on at least to phase 3 and trying to move back to some in-person meeting. All right. Any other comments or suggestions on that? Thank you all. So next we'll move to our council committee reports. First up is Committee on Human Resources, Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to give a brief Human Resources committee meeting. We met on Thursday, August 20th. We don't meet very often. It's more of a topical requirement type meeting as opposed to a regularly scheduled. So we did have some very important business that was a combination of the amazing combination staff of our Human Resources Director and her team in concert with Amy Wharton, our CFO, and the budget and the benefits analysts. And basically the main decision that we voted on was to approve the submission of the premiums for our employee benefits package. There will be no change to the benefits themselves, but we are needing to adopt a 7.8% overall increase based on the performance of the plan. I think we had some claims that sort of pushed us into an increased direction. And the reason that we needed to do that and give the direction to HR and our CFO, because the notice for the plans needs to be decided before we make our final budget decision. So this amount of funding will go into the base numbers of our 2021 budget, but we basically have given the green light to a contract for that, for the premium package that we all are proud to offer to our city employees. You'll see that we deferred the stop loss agreement at the request of the CFO. They're going to bring that straight to Ways and Means. And then we went on to a very specific and timely COVID-19 update, specifically geared to the state of our employees. We've heard a lot about that from Ms. McKee, so I don't think we need to go into that, but we really appreciate the attention, the tender loving care that we are providing to people with all of the announcements that go out from Jan Park's office, our on-staff nurse, and the woman who basically keeps track of all of the programs and the opportunities for our employees to be well looked after during this, unpredicted season. Then we had a really good, thorough presentation from our contractor, Novak, who have been following our employees' opinions about being workers within the city. And so this was a year to update the employee survey that had been done originally in 2018 under Julia Novak's leadership as a consultant to the city. And so we had a thorough report. I think that's been made available to the full council. And if you haven't looked at it, we're happy to forward you another copy. They continue to drill down into some of the demographics. And I'm proud to say that the Women's Commission had made some suggestions about, tracking information about our employees that hadn't really been part of the mix in 2018. So we were glad to know that we've been making a difference in how we're thinking about our employees and their suggestions and satisfaction with all the questions that we want to know about turnover and their longevity and things like that. So it's a really good survey. Then we received it's on our agenda. It's called the Report from the Women's Commission. Basically, it was 3 recommendations that the Commission on Women had put forward to HR. The one that you all should be familiar with was the original resolution that was recommended to the council, which we put forward to Human Resources to study the opportunity to begin offering paid family life leave as part of our employee benefit package. And I'm very proud again as a council member of the Commission on Women to say that it was a very thorough 6 months of evaluation and working cooperatively with Ryan Landry in particular from the Human Resources staff, did all of the research in conjunction with some of the research that the Women's Commission had begun a year ago. So we now have, I think, the beginnings of a very great informative comparative study about what other localities like ours are doing. And we came up with a incremental progressive benefit to honor the family life leave intentions that we all declared as a council last year. Unfortunately, with the 2021 budget being what it's going to be, I think the Human Resources Committee made a very careful and good stewardship decision to delay putting that, any family life leave on our agenda for the 2021 budget. But we're going to continue to fine tune it and promote it and study what other jurisdictions are doing. So I think we're going to have to wait and see that this package is going to be introduced for 2022. The other two suggestions that the Commission on Women made to the Human Resources Committee that we discussed and took action on was one additional study that the Commission on Women members had been doing about what everyone calls the salary history question. It's very similar to the written questions when an applicant is asked to, is invited to apply for a job, and they call it ban the box. So the city has been banning the box about whether you had any history of incarceration or any sort of criminal offense. We have not been doing that for a few years, and I think that's a good feather in the city's cap. The other question that we have been asking on applications is a salary history question. What is your most recent salary? And that has become a real, I think a pretty well accepted question that we should be dropping from our application. As you can imagine, it can be a matter that really discriminates against people who have been underpaid in similar jobs or had to be out of the workforce as, parents length of time and are behind on their salary based on their own career opportunities. So we have recommended that instead of asking the salary history question, that we turn it into an aspirational, what salary would you think is appropriate for the job you're applying for? And that basically gives the same, look at if people are going to be applying for jobs that meet their salary needs. That was the reason that the Human Resources staff has been keeping that question on an application, because they don't want people to be, surprised by applying for a job and then realizing that the salary that's being offered by the city is not going to meet, their expectations of their needs. So we've made that a compromise with the Human Resources Department. And I think, Mayor, you've determined that you're going to go along with that, and that will be the way that we collect sort of a salary question answer from people who apply to be employed by the city. The last recommendation that the Commission on Women have made is to support and make permanent what has become the temporary work-at-home policy that the city has enacted during the COVID pandemic. We think that's a wonderful addition to our human resources, policy. And so we're recommending that we turn what has currently been a temporary opportunity into a permanent. And obviously it needs to be worked through with each department head and the jobs that they are in charge of. But we do feel like that the time has come in our technology and in the workforce and in the way that people have to commute to jobs that they could probably do just as well at home, at least some hours a week, if not full time. And so I think that was well received by our staff and by the commission or by the committee members. And so we're looking forward to making that a permanent enhancement of our employee policy. That's it. Thank you very much for listening. I know it was a little long-winded, but we don't meet very often. Councilmember Gregory.
Thank you, Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, just a couple of things. The banning the box. I think we have to just make it clear that if we ban the box, according to Human Resources, we will still continue to do our background checks.
Sure.
So if there is an issue, we should still be able to pick it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the work at home. In addition to the work at home, we also discussed flex time. Right. And in many cases, Mayor, as you know, we're already doing that in some of our departments. But however, if somehow we can sort of formalize that, and again, most of what we're talking about are not council decisions. These are administrative decisions that would be made by the mayor and his staff. But I just want to make, Madam Chairman, I just want to put those two issues on the table.
Thank you. I appreciate the, enhancement of my report, council member. So.
Right. Good observation. All right, any discussion on any of those items? We want to receive the report of the Human Resources Committee.
Yes, sir. I recommend we receive it. Thank you.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you for that report, and a lot of work y'all did. Okay, Committee on Community Development, Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, Committee on Community Development met on Thursday, August 27th at 4:30. We had 3 different items, A, B, and C. Under A was the rental assisted demonstration that, excuse me, that Don Cameron came by and did a presentation talking about the RAD program, updating us on the RAD program and telling us, explaining to us what the project that will be affected first, which will be Kiowa Homes on Rutledge Avenue. And then also on 275 Hughie Street, they're planning to demolish that and build so many units there in that area. So he was updating and letting us know exactly where they're going with the RAD program. The RAD program is considered a rental assisted program. That's what the RAD program stands for. Then under B, we had a presentation from Mr. Bradford pertaining to the Friends of the Low Line, the community outreach education. And this explained to us about the low line, how it's coming, and also needing to get people in the community, even African-American individuals who know history about the area of the low line that was there, so we can kind of include them into this into that process and getting that done. And thirdly, we had a presentation about Laurel Island development, which was already approved by the Planning Commission, and it was sent to council for approval. And we did a presentation on that with Robert Clements and a couple of the staff members there, and giving us information about Laurel Island. So that's the only thing I have neither motion on is Laurel Island, so I move for approval of the report.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Councilmember Gregory.
Just to add just a bit, we did have extensive discussion also with Mr. Cameron. While rental assistance development is important, that is also important that we try to come up with some wealth creation, home ownership opportunities like the city has been doing over the years as a part of these programs. And for some reason or another, I don't know why, but there are programs that the Housing Authority has where people will be able to use their Section 8 certificate toward purchasing a home. And I just think that as council members and all of us having constituents who often want to be first-time home buyers, that somehow we need to convince our public housing authority that rental assistance is fine, but we also need to start thinking about how we can emulate really some of the programs that the city already has in place for homeownership, but through the housing authority, who already has a family self-sufficiency program in place where they're training people for homeownership opportunities. And lastly, as it relates to the development along Hughie Street, while currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, while currently there are public housing units, those units will be private while we will continue to have some assistance there. And we may be able to, I think it was one that we would gain, right, Mr. Chairman?
I think it's one.
Yeah, I think it's one in addition, but that will really be a private development.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the 275 Puget Street, and I questioned Mr. Cameron concerning that. That was built back in 1983. And I moved in there in 1983 when it was first built. This is a nice unit. I mean, 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom units, half bath and a half. And I was asking them, I said, well, this was built, you know, going to tear it down already? And they said, well, we're going to tear it down to build more units. But even the self-sufficiency program, I worked with that when I was working on the HUD, assisting people in using that to purchase home. And we had quite a few people went into that, but people who were paying high rent on the public housing. And once you get them to go into the first home time buyers workshop and getting them prepared for homeownership, you had quite a few people that went into it, but some people didn't want to do it. But that's one way, if even the housing that even the city of Charleston have in the first time home buyers program, some of those might be eligible for that, because if you have a Section 8 program certificate voucher, you can use that remainder money in there almost, if you got 15 years left, that money will go toward your mortgage payment, so to speak. So you will receive that subsidy for that 15 years. And after that 15 years is up, then you're really on your own paying your full mortgage payment. So that's one way of assisting people to become homeownership under that self-sufficiency program. And all of the housing authority carries that particular program. I don't know how much they're pushing it that much like they used to, but they all carry, the county, the city, North Charleston, everyone carry that self-sufficiency program.
All right. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. I do think, I think it's great that we're, adding on to, because these are very important programs that are going to be shepherded, supported, and participated in by the Housing Authority. So basically, my takeaway from Mr. Cameron's report to us was their properties have been inventoried and evaluated and prioritized into sort of two major groups of opportunity under this demonstration program that HUD has been basically encouraging all housing authorities to get into. So my understanding is that they have one category, it's called preservation. And that's where the Kiowa Homes is a good example of that, where those units are going to be retained and rehabbed to a significant level of, modernization. And then the other type of major program that HUD is approving now, it's basically a redevelopment demonstration. So Hugie Street will be demolished and rebuilt in a private public partnership model as a mixed income and more units overall. So I think that the model is allowing the Housing Authority to retain condominium ownership of the units that they will retain permanently for their own use with residents who will be allowed to come back and basically occupy a unit that's brand new under their current rental structure. And I totally agree with you, Councilmember Gregory. If we can encourage and figure out and add to ways that all of the residents of the Housing Authority could see themselves as homeowners and become homeowners, that would be fabulous. But I don't think they're going to give up ownership of the units. They're going to retain ownership, and it'll be a mixed income public-private partnership condominium regime.
All right, back to Councilmember Mitchell.
Yeah, and a lot of tenants there that's on the public housing as it stands now will, some of them will be offered what they call Section 8 certificate, Section 8 vouchers that they can move somewhere else, if they can find a place, because what HUD is paying, that's not what they're renting these houses out here for. And see, that's another problem they're going to run into. And that's the question I asked Don. If these people cannot find a place, what's going to happen? Because normally it was 60 days with a certificate to find a place. But he said, no, they'll be able to still come back. They'll have a longer period of time, 90 days or whatever the case may be. And I just want to make sure of that, because I want a person to go out there and take that, and they become homeless. And then we have more homeless people out there doing that again with their kids and children and things like that. So you got to be very careful, even when they accept that Section 8. And the reason why they're changing this is nationwide now with all the housing authorities, because the housing authority here for the city of Charleston, HUD put zero money in for renovation. So they have to now to be able to recap and have money to be able to maintain these buildings and renovate these buildings, because the zero money came to them and for restoration, renovation of these public housing.
Right, exactly. The end of the day, it's going to take a while, but at the end of the day, it's going to either modernize or reconstruct to new units and add some more units along the way. Not a huge addition, but some additional units as well. So it may take 2 decades for this to cycle through all 1,400 units, but it's a step in the right direction, y'all. It's going to take us a while to get there.
And Mr. Mayor, Gatson Green will be the last one because that's the largest one that they own. So that'll be the last one that they get to, which would be Gatson Green.
Well, I'm not sure it'll be the absolute last one. It wasn't in the first batch. They wanted
The middle of the pack, the middle of
get
the
their
tier.
legs under their feet first on working the program. All right, any further discussion?
So Mayor, I just want to be clear. Councilmember Mitchell, you said you wanted item C approved.
Well, that's the one have to be approved. The rest.
Okay, so I need somebody to second. You made the motion. I need a second.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Councilmember Jackson.
I'm sorry, what are we approving with item number C?
That's Laurel Island, because it was approved. It was sent to us from the Planning Commission. It was approved by the Planning Commission, sent to us to be approved instead of the City Council. So we have to approve it from the community development.
So that's approval of the PUD?
No.
Mr. Mayor, I think, and I don't know if legal is on the line, I think the recommendation from CD was to approve it, but I think it has to come to council for a public hearing for the PUD.
Okay.
For the final PUD approval.
Okay, all right.
That's right. I was going to say, even if y'all voted in favor of this now, we really pick up the matter in earnest when we have our public hearing.
Correct.
And that's when council would give its final approval or not to the PUD.
Mayor?
Yes,
So
sir.
your motion could be to send it to the commission. Is that what you're saying?
No, the Planning Commission sent it to the commission.
Okay. The Planning Commission is already sent. Okay.
We have to approve it there and send it to council. So it was.
Okay.
Let's do this. Let's accept the committee report, which included a recommendation for council to approve.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, and Mayor, just to give just a little bit more information on Laurel Island, we're talking about 200 permanent affordable housing opportunities on the island, and an additional 200 units. I think it's either 10 or 15 years.
10 years.
So to me, the fact that we're going to have 200 units in perpetuity, okay, is a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And you know, even having the other additional units that will sunset is still giving us a considerable amount of affordable housing opportunities in that PUD.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, I think the numbers are higher than that. I think there's 4,000 some overall units to be built on Laurel Island, and the permanent amount will be 10% of those units.
Correct.
And then another 10% will be the 10-year sunset. And what was recommended by the Planning Commission that we agreed with at the CD level was that those units will be delivered as they're built. So whatever future developer will not be allowed to wait until the final, build out to deliver those 800 units essentially.
I don't think it's 800 units, council member. We may want to check that.
It's 10% of the total amount.
So it'll depend on how many units they build, but they agreed upon that and it was incorporated in the PUD.
400 units, yeah.
I think their intent is to produce a goodly number of them earlier rather than later.
Correct.
But the 10-year clock will start at the CO. So instead of, I think the original proposal was that the 10-year clock would start when we approved the PUD. And now it's going to be when they deliver a unit, then the 10-year clock will start. That's what they agreed to in front of us.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. All right, any other comments? We'll receive this as a report, if you will, Councilmember Mitchell. I think that's the appropriate thing, given the fact that we technically vote on the PUD at our next meeting. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Let's move along to our Committee on Public Works and Utilities. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our committee met, and you see items Roman numeral 1 through 6, acceptance and dedications of the various roadways and rights-of-ways. They were passed unanimously, and I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Now, I'm going to jump out of order for 1 minute and come back to the stormwater updates. There was also an ordinance that was put forth really by Councilmember Griffin to include more participation on behalf of the city, as well as a Church Creek Stormwater Drainage Basin Authority to be established. That is item C on the agenda. It also was put forth and passed unanimously on the committee, and I so move.
Second. Any discussion, Councilmember Shealy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that there's a county council person that's going to be on there that is a county council person that is in the district that Church Creek is. Church Creek actually splits 2 districts. I don't think we need to change anything on it. I just wanted to clarify. I mean, the one council person that's in Church Creek right now, there's one that serves on our West Ashley West Ashley revitalization. So I think that's good. It would be the District 6 representative, I guess, that would need to do that. So just wanted to bring that clarification because there are 2 council people for the county, District 6 and 6.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Councilmember Shealy, that that District 6, that Councilmember Vic Rawl currently holds. Most of Church Creek is in that district, if I'm not mistaken. So it was my intention that that's who we would ask.
Very good. I think so too. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any further comments on the Church Creek ordinance? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it.
And now we go back to the stormwater management updates. Pay attention, there's one in particular for Barberry Woods on Johns Island, King and Hugie, Councilman Saccharin, Barberry Woods, Councilman Brady, South Windermere, Councilman Appel may have an interest in that one, I don't know. Mr. Fountain, can you touch bases on that for council, please, on all items?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Waring. So the first item was Barberry Woods drainage improvement. It was accepting the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. It's $117,500 of federal funding matched with $117,500 of city funds from the Drainage Fund Barberry Woods project. Basically is a plan to identify existing drainage patterns, natural drainage patterns and natural drainage systems on Johns Island, plus to identify ones that have been damaged by development and propose options for renaturalization and enhancement of those damaged items, similar to what we're doing in the Barberry Woods project. The second item was King and Hugie drainage improvement. This is the next step in the design work. We've previously designed the surface drainage collection improvements and taken the pump station concept to a 30% design for a couple of different options for the pump station. This task now would be to further that selected pump station design all the way through final design and permitting and construction drawings, as well as providing some additional construction services based on some environmental contamination in the intersection from a gas station. The third item is the Windermere drainage improvement. This is the initial professional service contract with Thomas & Hutton for the conceptual design work in the Windermere, kind of the greater Windermere Basin to look at different options for drainage improvement in that area and come back with recommendations for, again, design and permitting. The fourth item then was for the low battery seawall. This was basically a conversion of a previous purchase order that will go above $40,000 into a contract for vibration monitoring services through the end of the contract, through the end of the project. We haven't had any issues on the project at this point with vibration, but we've had a lot of concerns, so we're continuing our monitoring efforts to address that. Item 5 was the just a discussion about the FEMA has now provided the final Charleston County flood insurance rate maps that the city can adopt. The way FEMA is doing the Charleston County maps is a little bit different than they did the Berkeley County maps. They're basically having a hard date for adoption that no matter when basically the local agencies adopt, they'll become effective January 29th, even if you adopt before that date. And they're just trying to make instead of it being phased in over different municipalities across the county, everyone has the same unified start date. So we discussed that, and we'll be bringing information probably at the next Public Works and Utilities meeting for an actual ordinance to begin that adoption process. We discussed a little bit of information about how the maps are changing, which is that they're generally, flood zones are getting a little bit lower. The data, of course, is collected pre-2015, so we don't know if that will hold up through the next flood map update in 10 years. And then we discussed briefly, there's some changes in the velocity zone and the coastal A zone, which gives us some opportunities to basically modify some other ordinances that we'll be bringing a further discussion to Public Works Utilities either later this month or beginning of October to propose those options for building code modifications as well.
Okay, now items B1 through 4, we need to make a motion to vote on, and I so move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, it passed unanimously at the committee meeting level.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any
And
opposed?
the
Ayes have it.
and the last item it would be the stormwater project updates. We had the elongated one last August at the August meeting, but Mr. Fountain, could you touch on the 3 or 4 that we did in the meeting?
Thank you, Councilman Warren. So we did, since we only had one August meeting, it's only been a couple of weeks since the last update, so we did a very abbreviated update for this meeting. Basically, we just mentioned the low battery. We're relocating a gas line and preparing to transition from South Murray Boulevard to North Murray Boulevard, which will be a major milestone in that project. For King and UG, due to some of the contamination with the gas station, we're updating our MOA with CWS, and we're bringing that back to council for how we'll be splitting those contamination costs and furthering that project. But we're still preparing for a fall bid for those surface drainage improvements. Central Park drainage, we scheduled some neighborhood discussions. We're working on scheduling them with the county. Basically, the city looks like it's awarded some CTC funding in addition to SCDOT being awarded some CTC funding. That's the county gas tax committee. The county is basically going to take those 2 funding allocations and use them to manage the improvement project on what was area 4 within that report. So the city is going to look at basically working on areas 1 and 2 and the downstream of area 3, but we'll have more discussion about that with the council members who are impacted by it, and then prepare something to bring back to Council and Public Works Utilities Committee for approval. The Cooper Jackson drainage evaluation, that's the east side work. We're underway now on 10,000 feet of drainage pipe rehabilitation in that neighborhood. So we should see some real improvements there. We've handed out flyers in the neighborhood and kind of notified the neighborhood association presidents in the area on that. We are finding a lot of issues with the piping system in that area, as you would expect. The Church Creek Storage Projects Selection Committee selected the top 2 firms, and we have interviews with them this week to progress that project. And then DuPont Wapu, we've kind of finalized our path forward with the county for the first 4 projects, finished our design scope negotiations between us, the county, and AECOM. And we're just finalizing the IGA at this point, so we can bring that back through council for getting those designs started on the first 4 improvement projects. And that basically is the end of that.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, the rest of the information at the committee was for information only, and that's the extent of our report.
Great. Thank you kindly. Next up is our Committee on Public Safety. Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and I've been in this chair since that hour. And we've been plodding right along with the committee meetings since then. So thank you for the opportunity to give you a report on public safety. We amended our agenda to include an update for emergency management, and Shannon Scaff gave us a detailed report on emergency management, particularly in light of hurricane season. The one thing of important note, I received a communication from Chief Dan Currier and from Shannon that we're rolling emergency management into the Charleston Fire Department, which I think is a very good idea to organize and coordinate their efforts together on first response and emergency management responses as well. We received a report from Susan Herdina as to the update on arrests, prosecutions of the afternoon of May 31st and early evening of May 31st. And Susan, if you're still with us, I can sort of tee her up a little bit. But the city police department made 47 arrests on Sunday, the 31st, late afternoon, early evening. 27 cases were recommended to be dismissed, in which the municipal judge agreed to dismiss those cases. And Susan, with that tee up for you, you may want to give a little more meat on the bones with those 47 cases and the numbers that have been dismissed and what took place with that.
Sure. Very briefly, as you said, on August 31st, there were 27 cases that the prosecutor recommended be dismissed. 12 cases were recommended to be continued. The court agreed. What I stressed at the meeting this afternoon was that no cases that were dismissed on the 31st involved any kind of violent action, no brick throwings, no vandalizing property, spray painting, looting, hurting anyone. There were no cases that were dismissed that related to charges that were brought against the looters and other criminals from the evening of May 30th and the morning of the 31st. The chief talked about those and the status of those, so I won't go over that. Each case was presented to the court individually. Many hours were spent looking at each of those cases. Of all the cases, all the arrests that were made on the 31st, body cams were reviewed, reports were reviewed from the police officers, supplemental reports from other jurisdictions were reviewed, and each case again was looked at individually. All the cases that were dismissed, of the 27 that were dismissed from May 31st, those arrestees had spent the night at Leeds Avenue. They were required to post a bond of $465. There were no new charges that had been brought against them between May 31st and the end of August. Again, none of them participated in the events of the prior night. Most of the vast majority of the cases that were dismissed simply involved young people, frankly, who had no criminal record and were peacefully demonstrating in Marion Square and did not leave when the police asked them to, but eventually did in a peaceful manner. So as I had said to the committee, there was a lot of misinformation that seemed to be circulating on Facebook and other social media about the cases. And I felt it was important to stress that none of those cases in municipal court involved the violent activities that occurred the night of the 30th and the early morning hours of the 31st.
Thank you, Susan, for that. I'm gonna move on to Chief Reynolds. I will, before he gets on, note, and he will talk about this a little bit more detail, as to the events of the May 30th into the early hours of May 31st. But the U.S. Attorney's Office issued a press release announcing the federal formal charges against 6 individuals involved in those riots into Columbia and in Charleston. Of those 6, 2 are associated with the events that took place in Columbia, and 4 involved individuals who were charged formally by federal charges resulting in the May 30th, 31st violence that took place in Charleston. I have been in contact with Peter McCoy, the U.S. Attorney, and with his office. He's been feeding me some information regarding those formal charges. With that tee up, Chief Reynolds, I want to ask you to go ahead and give us the numbers on those folks involved in the violent aspect of what occurred on May 30th and in the early morning hours of May 31st.
Sure, and if I could, I'll just take the liberty of thanking a lot of the people that have helped us respond that night, the next night, and every night since then with a variety of protests. And if we've had over 40 permits just since we've started reissuing permits for a variety of different protests. We've gotten help from the sheriffs, chiefly the Charleston County Sheriff's Office, Berkeley County Sheriff's Office, Mount Pleasant, North Charleston, SLED, and many other agencies. More specific to this investigation, I think it's important to note that our detectives, our officers, and all of our partners never, ever slowed down from the day that these cases occurred. They've had their foot on the gas pedal. They've continued to make sure that every piece of evidence that's been presented, every clue that's been shared, every video, every statement, every piece of information we had a tip on has been followed up on, has been acknowledged, and has been focused on to make sure that we identify the violent criminal offenders who attacked our city on the night of the 30th and the following morning, to include arsons, thefts, vandalisms, assaults on the police, on our merchants, on our businesses, and on our residents. And so it's very important to note the distinction of these violent criminal offenses that we're talking about right now. We are prosecuting these to the greatest extent that's possible to include federal adoption of these cases. And 4 of those cases today that were announced by the U.S. Attorney Peter McCoy were our cases from that night. And I anticipate at least 1 additional adoption for federal cases. And we have gotten tremendous support from the U.S. Attorney's Office and from our local solicitor's office, Scarlett Wilson and her team. She's assigned 1 singular prosecutor, Dave Osborne, for all these cases to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. And we continue to, and have from day 1, work closely with our partners in the FBI and the ATF. And with that, we had a total number of arrest warrants issued thus far of 90 arrest warrants. 1 of those was in Marion for an incident that occurred in Marion Square on the 31st. A total number of offenders identified, 31, and an additional 5 offenders that were arrested on view during the riots. The total number of 74 warrants have been served. 16 warrants are still outstanding for a total of 90 that have been issued. Total number of offenders who have been arrested, 26, with the 5 additional on-view arrests. And the total number of offenders with federal charges, federal adoption, are 4 cases. And I anticipate at least 1 additional case. We're working with the ATF. And for those federal cases, 2 were riot related, 2 were arson related, and 1 was related to gun charges. Total state charges, we had 9 for arson, of which 2 were for retail stores. More are under investigation. 5 for arson to a police car and 2 for attempt to burn. We had 46 burglary charges, inciting a riot, 3 for felony statute. We had 10 for assault and battery, of which 2 were on citizens and 8 on police officers. And 1 of those was an assault from Sunday in Marion Square. And we had 22 for damage to property, and nearly all of those are general sessions charges.
Thank you, Chief. And I will mention as well that Councilmember Sacker brought to our attention regarding the developments with these cases and the resolution of these municipal level cases. that we get a better heads up and notification of those prior to it happening. And I think that we agree that that would take place. We then received a update from Dan Riccio on the number of face covering ordinance enforcements. Dan, are you still with us? Yeah, there you are.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
And I think the number that you gave us on citations being issued.
Yes, sir. 41 citations have been issued, continuing the enforcement efforts in conjunction with the police department and in coordination with Chief Reynolds. So everything's going smooth and as well as expected.
Okay. And the final item on our agenda, Mr. Mayor and members of council, is that we received a status report on the after action review of the events of May 30, 31st. Chief Reynolds is still on the line, but we are anticipating a report being received to the Public Safety Committee by the end of September. The committee had a discussion about the next process with that. Once we receive the report from the police department, we will review it and digest it. And then we will meet and then make decisions on how we want to present a report and recommendation to the full council at that time. Chief Reynolds, anything else we wanted to add to the after action review? This is certainly within the purview and the oversight of the Public Safety Committee to receive that report and to provide the oversight, I think, to the council and to the community as to the events of May 30, May 31st. Chief, did I leave anything out regarding that? Chief Reynolds, did I lose you?
He's gone.
Okay. He looked like he was done with that. So, Mr. Mayor, that is our report. There's no items that need to be voted on at this time, but that is our report. I appreciate the work that the legal department has done in preparing for this report, and the police department as well. And certainly do appreciate the coordination with our other law enforcement agencies, with the solicitor's office, and with the U.S. Attorney's Office on their cooperation. And it looks like other charges and other individuals may be charged federally as well. You muted, Mr. Mayor, you muted.
Thank you for that report. Next, we'll move right along to our Committee on Ways and Means. Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, before I move for approval, I just want to make sure that the record reflects what I said during the Committee on Ways and Means meeting with regard to the budget, finance, and revenue collections, the stormwater system refunding, that I'm going to be pursuing that $5 million that we will get in savings to go toward a fix for the Wamba drainage project. I know we have a number of residents on the phone, and I think the common thread that we all hear is that we need to fix it. So at some point during the budgetary process, I just want council and the mayor to know that I will be pursuing, and hopefully with the support of my fellow James Island council members, that $5 million be earmarked specifically for the Wamba project. Other than that, I move for approval of the Committee on Ways and Means report.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Jennifer. I hate to do this, but going back to Public Works and Utilities, I may have missed this. Was there a vote on the ordinance to form the Church Creek Stormwater Drainage Basin Authority?
Yes, ma'am, there
Yeah.
was.
All right, thank you.
It was approved unanimously. We took it a little out of order, so you might have missed it. Okay, so Okay, I hear you loud and clear, Councilmember Gregory. I do want to share with you that savings is over like a 12-year period. So in all likelihood, we're going to fund those improvements quicker through our stormwater fund and stormwater bond, and but I just thought I'd share.
No, I clearly understand that. But perhaps since we know that we're going to be getting X dollars annually, couldn't we go for a bond perhaps to?
We will be. We will.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure that there is a way to get it before the 12-year
I
period.
just didn't want to give anybody an impression that the savings from that bond refinance was going to be available immediately.
Oh, no, clearly understand that. But I think that there may be a way that we can still, do what I'm going to propose.
Right. And so also just to let you know, every year the mayor gets to prioritize our funding from the CTC transportation funds. It's not a whole lot of money. It's about 350,000. But my top priority was for the Central Park Road improvements that are part of the drainage improvements. And that was approved by county council. So there's a little bit of more money there for you.
Okay.
Coming your way.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is bills for second reading. We got 10 items.
Move to take second.
Did you say a motion for all 10, 1 through 10?
1 through 10.
All right.
Second.
Mr. Mayor?
We got a motion and a second. Councilmember Jackson.
I would really like to carve out item number 2, please. I do have some discussion, or at least my own comments about number 2.
Okay, we'll take numbers 1 and then 3 through 10 together. Is that acceptable?
Yep, I move for approval for 1 and 3 through 10.
All right.
Second.
Got a second? Any discussion on any of those? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading.
Move for approval, second.
Those same items, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now we'll take up item number 2. For discussion, can I have a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
Second. Second. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this second reading. I've really been thinking about this. Obviously I buy into all the affordable housing options and opportunities that we can provide through our zoning code. So it's been a hard decision for me to decide that this is really one that I was hoping that we make this ordinance sort of a pilot that we started on the peninsula to see how it turned out, because that really is, where we have the biggest affordability challenges and where we have properties that are probably more attuned to having a small little ADU combined with the primary residence. But the sentiment was just to go forward under one blanket ordinance. So I have a lot of concerns how this would actually play out in the where we have larger properties, and the problem that I basically have is twofold. I think it'll be very hard to enforce the affordability of the units as we are approving them. And that for me is the carrot for making ADUs, part of our affordable housing inventory mix. But I know how hard it is to literally keep up with rental agreements and making sure that it starts out on an affordable basis. That might be one thing. But as time goes on and people, rent and renew and rent again, I've seen this in my community. It's just very hard to enforce individual affordability on a single family property. And the other concern that I have that I'm experiencing on a regular basis is our the challenges that we have to enforce unlicensed short-term rentals. because for the same reason, we're stretched very thin when it comes to enforcement and the staff that is required to come out. People don't like to rat on their neighbors. Most people don't even know that there's an affordable, or a short-term rental license ordinance restriction in the city. I live out here, in typical borough territory where it's a checkerboard of jurisdictions. So I'm concerned about how we would actually make this ordinance into the tool that we're all in favor of to incentivize the affordability of permanent rentals, not short-term gain for property owners. So I'm gonna have to vote against this ordinance, much to my regret. I hope it works out, and I'm really gonna have to work hard to make sure that it works fine for James Island. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you kindly. And then for third reading and ratification.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right. Thank you very much. We have no bills up for first reading. So the last thing on the agenda is to have an executive session or two. The first on the lawsuit regarding the Central Park cluster development. And then we have another update after that. I would share with anybody in the public that's still with us that when we come back from our executive session, there's no plan or intent for us to take any action on any other items tonight. So you're welcome to hang around for when we come back, but in all likelihood, we'll just be adjourning when we do come back. So can I entertain a motion that we go into executive session? First on the Central Park cluster development. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we will go into executive session. Jennifer, if you would put us all into the waiting room or the breakout room, I guess you call it.
Yes, sir. And everyone who is joining, you'll be receiving an invitation to join the breakout room in just a few moments.
All right.